Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. And of course, we are recording this. Like, by the time you see this, it'll actually have been recorded a few hours earlier. So we are recording it during the major. In fact, before even this the elimination stage of Swiss has ended. And so actually, some of you watching this tomorrow, there'll already be games which potentially could have impacted some of these storylines. And we can't know what happens in those matches or what happens in the next part of the tournament. So we're doing it a little bit more scuffed. But I thought there's very little content during a major. So why not just do some of these shows during, and then people have stuff to watch? It's not like everyone watches every match either. That's the other thing I do think is silly about esports, pretending that like every fan watches every team. Of course you don't. Like, there's teams that, like, the joke is, if you're a normal person, you didn't even have to watch that last match. It was bloody Ecstatic versus Furia. Who cares? Unless you're like Ecstatic's family or the people losing millions of dollars over Fallen in Furia, why would you care about that game? Whatever, who gives a... Right, so our guest for this one is a return guest. It is ZywOo. Now, to be fair, last time we had him on, he had hair. Now he's fucking copying Moses or something. He's like an egg or something. What's going on?
I mean, it's working out. I got bullied by basically
right.
everybody.
People told you to do it, right?
Yeah, I just basically got bullied, and then I shaved my head, and my brother's like, "Yeah, I was thinking it was about time. I just didn't want to."
Oh, what the hell?
Like, bro, what the fuck?
Okay. Okay. Right, so you obviously are a streamer, and when you stream, you like to analyse the game a bit like launders. And then I notice you also operate quite a cynical operation, because you bring that Austin guy on as sort of a straight man, so that you look good, like you know a lot about the game. And he's, you know, he plays sort of the straight man casual who goes, yeah, I don't know, call bloody Grim used to be good on try. And then you go like, actually, I think you'll find on overpasses, game has dropped down 4.3 thing. And then that, as far as I can tell, it's just to make you look good in it. Isn't that how your streaming works?
I also know this is the game better. I mean, he's competing.
Of course,
in theory,
yeah,
he knows the specifics better. But I don't think he watches a lot of Pro CS.
No, he doesn't. I'm only roasting him because I did actually watch part of his like pick and video, and unfortunately, I could just tell like some of them he just knew the names of. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, whatever. He was doing okay. He was doing all right. Yeah. Right. Obviously, spoiler. We already know the point of this show. Maui figured it out a few episodes in. Is it's just an excuse to just talk about whatever you want to, but you crowbar it in like, no, I have a very good topical bad point, and then it's just like your player that you hate, that you had a bad game. Now we all do that. So spoiler, if you've been following ZywOo's Twitter, obviously he might bring up certain topics and just crowbar them in and force me and Mauisnake to talk about them. By the way, as you should, I'm glad everyone's figured out the meta of this show. Good. Of course, there is another factor I would like to talk about, not just ZywOo and his bizarre Laurel and Hardy-esque straight man relationship with Austin to make himself look good, while the other one goes, I don't know about this one, Ollie, whatever. And then basically, you know, then the stream ends, I don't know, and then people just go, well, at least it wasn't Flom. Whatever. Everyone can catch it today. Often it's like Bugsy Malone, that old one, where they're shooting them with the pie guns. Everyone can get it on this episode. So obviously, I want to introduce you to Factor Meals. And the topic here is, aren't gamers lazy? I know I really was when I was a young gamer, and I certainly did not like cooking. I didn't want to have to get a bunch of ingredients, figure out how to do it. Because another thing I'll say is, even though I will say cooking is a joy when you get into it, once you get like to a certain skill level, the problem is before that, like anything, it's really annoying. Like it's annoying to be bad at something, right? You've all played CS for years and years. Doesn't it suck to watch Forrest do like a 4K, and then you go in the game like, I can't wait, and then you realise you can't do any of that stuff. So in this scenario, what if essentially a Forrest 4K could just be delivered to you, and you heated it up for 2 minutes, then you had a Forrest 4K and it was in your game? That doesn't exist. That would be a great sponsor if that indeed was what we got. But for food, I can actually do that for you, because if you get Factor Meals, they're basically already prepared. You just pop them in the microwave. They take 2 minutes to heat up, and they're delicious. So it's perfect actually between games. The joke of 2 minutes is you could actually, in a pro game, even actually make one of those theoretically in the half swap between an actual LAN match. Not that I'd recommend Boros does that, you know, while he's at like an RMR or anything. But if you wanted a snack, that would be a great way to do it. So 2 minutes is all it takes. You can get right back to your game, or you stack won't have to wait too long. Like Falcons and FaZe in an off season, they have 35 different options they can choose from. You can get the calorie smart one if you want to obviously lose a bit of weight. You can do protein plus if you're trying to get dem gains. Or you can do keto if you just don't like carbohydrates, or you really love eating animal products, as indeed I do. That's right, I am a carnivore. Did you know that? Not literally. I also sometimes eat a vegetable if it sort of gets snuck in there, or someone hides it in a sauce or something. Have been known to consume them. Now, unlike majors, they also have a flexible schedule. You can like change change how much you want. You could do the minimum amount, a few meals, basically one a day. You could go up to like basically all your meals pretty much. And it's super easy. It's just got a whole like thing on the back end where you can change that week to week, depending on if you're liking it, if you're not liking it as much, if you're going away for a week, if you're going to be at home a whole week. Very easy to do. So if you want to support this channel and save 50% on an order and try out Factor Meals, then go to factormeals.com/snakebanter50, all one word, and use code snakebanter50 for 50% off an order. That's factormeals.com/snakebanter50 for 50% off. Right, let's get into it. So we always start, Vu, you've already done an episode before, we always start with the good, and obviously you're the first person. So what is your good point you are bringing to the show?
I know you guys are going to hate on this one. Actually, I think MR12 is not bad much at all.
Everyone, take stock of what you just said a second there, guys. After all the shows and all the broadcasts, and everyone has finally agreed in the consensus, like MR12 at least sucks in some kind of. He's just saying, just straight up, like at face value, my good point to start the show is MR12. Isn't that brilliant, eh? So I tell you what, I'm definitely interested. You've got a fucking rapt audiences, so hit me with it. What reasons have you got that it's good?
Okay, first of all, I'm sorry to you guys, but if we're talking about the fans, the casual fans, MR15 is way too fucking long.
Oh, sure.
Okay, it's just way too long. I genuinely, I want to watch the games. I get bored halfway through a game in MR15. MR12, I'm watching 2, 3, 4 times as many games because almost every round is relevant. Almost every round has something to it. And the biggest thing I think is that it actually made people realize the importance of the economy and adjust how they're playing. Because I posted this on Twitter before. In the last 3 months of CSGO, the team that won both pistols, if they won both pistols, if you didn't trade them or whatever, won the game 73% of the time in the top 20. First 3 months of CS2, 66%. At the major so far, it's 60%, which seems to suggest that if winning both pistols doesn't win you the game, it doesn't feel like, and you see a lot of pros talk about pistol rounds are too important. Pistol rounds currently are not more important. Now, you could argue that I'm not looking at the second round because that's a different thing. But if you win the first round, currently winning the second round is like 85% on most maps. It's even more certain than in CSGO. It's not, I don't think it has as much of an impact as people are making it out to be. And it makes the game a lot more enjoyable to watch. I mean,
he's actually unironically attempted a normie take. Okay, fair enough. Playing to the crowd.
Yeah.
I think that's like the only reason that it's okay is that you can get through the day faster. I guess production probably loves it because most of production behind the scenes doesn't really care about the integrity of the game in terms of finding the best winner all the time. They just want the games and days to be over faster. But I feel like when it comes to this I think what I would not mind about MR12 is if we always use BO3s. That's actually probably my take with this is that I would say that it's almost like there's a happy medium where we can use MR12, but that means it has to be a BO3 minimum because I do still feel like you say that the first round doesn't matter. And you even acknowledge the fact that you're not really looking at the second round. I kind of argue that the second round is probably the most important because if you're a T-side team, everybody knows this now. If you're a T-side team, you plant the bomb on the pistol, you lose that round. Your second round isn't even that bad. Like you still, in so many cases, if you win that second round, you're hurting them almost more than if you actually just won the pistol because now the CTs, instead of getting 1900 the second round, are back to 1400 after what was pretty much a cobbled by together after winning the pistol. So I will say that in some
adjustments, I think.
Yes. Yeah. If anything, it's almost like I could accept MR12 if there was, if again, like my one way I would want to accept MR12 wholly and be actually just fine with it, just play BO3s all the time. Because then I do think we're getting to the right result more often than not. And I think that with MR12, there's still more variance. That being said, this major has shaped out rather well with the teams, and I think the quality of teams has actually been on display. Like, I don't feel like there's too many teams that are just randoming their way up to the top here, as I did more so with the Paris major. And so I think that there's a few things that have gone pretty well with CS2. I'm not as vehemently opposed to MR12 as I think Thorin is, but I just do wish that, one, either the economy changes in some way that makes it so that second round isn't as brutal as it is, or two, I just want more BO3s.
The problem here is you actually, if this was like the hot take show, you would have fucked the take up. 'Cause it would on the surface be the best hot take ever. Because as I say, no one would agree. Everyone would go, what the hell? And they'd all react. But the problem is you made it too reasonable. This is what you don't do on the hot take show. By just saying at the beginning, like essentially the framing is for normies and casuals, not for like the people on this show or the kind of like lunatic who probably watches this show who are super invested and essentially like esports is their life in a way. And this is their sport. They follow it like a nerd would follow baseball or something where they're looking up old stats and stuff like that. And the joke is actually, if there's a little base detail for Maui there, I actually do think esports was ahead of real sports in that sense, because obviously all those sites like Basketball Reference, not many people used to use that back in the day. Now, all the basketball fans are like the HLTV stand who's just checking all the stats. Like, oh, you had 14 more kills. Like, everyone uses those sites now. In fact, the joke is half the conversations look like people only look on those sites, much like this idiot looking at the rating on HLTV, and they forget to watch the game and see if the guy was actually good or not. They just go, he was better and carried this one. It's like, no, the number just says that, mate. So what I would say is, like, I think it's a fair point for normies. Like, obviously, I'm not in that position, and that is, let's be fair, technically who the major service is. It does service the... Remember, the thing that people have always misunderstood about Counter-Strike, I'm amazed how many people in esports don't get this, is you don't really think that, like, Valve waves a magic wand when it's the major, and then, like, 800k extra people turn up. People who are normies don't watch normal Counter-Strike. They don't watch even IEM Cologne, by the way, guys. Like, even what to us are, like, just as good as a major. There's a reason their viewership never gets close to, like, the biggest majors, etc. But every major has the chance for the million viewers and stuff, because there's some people, or the normies tune in, like people, Americans tune in for the World Cup in soccer. You don't care about the sport, but you might watch the World Cup if it's on, because you heard it's a big thing. Or the other example is Europeans watch the Super Bowl, even though they don't watch hand egg at all, and they don't know anything about American football. They just know it's a cultural thing, and it's a big thing at that moment. So I would say, to be fair, you have, actually for the major particularly, you probably have a good case to make there. If at the moment it's only about, which it is in this current economy, in the economy of esports, it's only about maximum eyeballs. That's all you care about, is maximum eyeballs for as long as possible on your stream. So if it's the case that actually having MR15 means that people tune out, or the games get too boring, or they just don't even watch games, like I'll even say that to Maui's point. If it means you can fit in more games, especially if a few of them are quick, they're going to end up collectively potentially watching longer, because maybe they don't have that one game where on a like 8-4, they're just like, I'm not into this game, and it's like an overpass game that's going to last forever. Maybe that's when they tune up. Maybe they don't in this case. Maybe they think, oh, it's only a couple more rounds, and then we're on to the next game. There could be an argument there, but that's when I'm being too kind. If I go into all the things I care about, spoiler, I don't care about the masses of humanity. I'm not saying I'd press a button and, you know, blow them all up with some sort of an atomic weapon. That would be outrageous. All I'm saying is I don't care about them. I'm not saying I wouldn't blow them all up with an atomic bomb either. I'm just...
I'll double down on this one. Yeah. I'll double down on this one. No, it's just, I don't think it's just about the normies. I think that's a big part. It is adjusted. It is like hyper sped up the meta. And I think teams, for good or for ill, because I'm a little bit annoyed about like fucking VP saving in a 4v5 on an anti-eco is fucking insane. But teams are playing, I think it's, I'm just going to repeat the same. It's hyper sped up the meta. Adjustments, starting in semi-stack stuff like on Nuke, you're seeing a lot of teams that will start one ramp and then they'll pivot back to elbow, and then they'll pivot outside and they'll triple outside and basically hard fight outside. This is stuff that I think was teams were shifting in this direction. Now they're shifting even further in this direction to make up for the fact that it's MR12. So in theory, if we took how teams are playing now and put it into MR15, I think that would be 100 times better. But if you take MR15 and you bring it to MR12 and teams adjusted because of MR12, and we'll say it's MR12 that's caused this, I think it has changed the meta so that MR12 is not nearly as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. It's helped teams adjust the meta so they're not forcing every second round, which must have been, it's the only explanation I have for why pistols are less important in CS2 than in CSGO. It must be the way you're playing your economy. I mean, I would just remove the 1400 loss bonus entirely, by the way. Just fuck that.
Oh, of course.
1900 from the start. But,
yeah, exactly.
And I agree, you should probably play more BO3s, but I also think that MR12 has caused teams to shift more in terms of playing economy correctly. Again, would be better if it was MR15, in theory, for the hardcore, but because it only happened because of MR12, I'd say MR12 and MR15, I think in terms of the better team winning, I think it's not far off. I don't think it's very far off.
I will even say, I also do think if you then want to make the argument that a lot of us do of we want BO3s and no more BO1s, you're going to have a way easier time selling the TOs on it if it's MR12 because the games will be quicker and they'll have the 2-0s. That might be... Like, the joke is a team like Spirit would run through a best of 3 in about fucking an hour and a half. Like, they could absolutely blast that, whereas that would take forever in even an MR15 one just because of the extra rounds and the extra time out that someone would take, and then the round where you do the existence timeout and you just talk... Like, that stuff doesn't exist anymore to some degree. I'm sort of with you on that one. The problem I have is this. I actually do think the biggest issue entirely is just the economy, like both of you were addressing. I looked it up now because I wanted to see how long ago this was. Unironically, one of the videos I am the most proud of ever making in the Thorin's Thoughts series is the one about that the economy was just about punishing CTs. And I looked it up and I actually made this video, guys, in April of 2020. And some people, as Maui just pointed out, are figuring this stuff out now, 4 years later. Because what I did back then was I actually looked at the literal effect of the economy. Like you say, the classic example where it mega fucks you is if you win CT pistol, but then get force backed by the Ts and lose the second round, you can essentially just be behind on the economy forever. It's not like, because obviously there's not the old hard reset. So because there's not the hard reset, what happens basically is now you not only have to win the round. So normal Counter-Strike, you think I'm just trying to win the round, aren't I? Who cares if I'm in a 1v1? No. Now all of a sudden you have to win the round and have 3 people alive. Otherwise, constantly you're not having enough weapons and utility as the CTs. And what it means is if you ever see a game like that, you'll just realize, you'll see that the flow of the game is about the least satisfying match you will ever watch, because literally the CTs can win every round seemingly. Not every round, obviously, because eventually a road would stack, but they can win, like, they can keep winning around, losing around, and if they do that, it's the worst possible scenario for them. They're constantly like coming to the next buy round with a scuffed buy. Like, they just won the round and did like the 1v1 and won the clutch and everything, and this guy's got a fab ass because of it. Meanwhile, the T's just getting his AK again, getting his AK again, getting his AK every fucking round. So unfortunately, I do think it actually mega affects competitive play. And the worst thing is, like Maui said, I'm not as bothered about the pistols, but that second round, when that happens to the CTs, ruins the game. Because at the end of the day, it's like the thing we've been saying about qualifying to the major. The reason I keep saying it doesn't make sense, it's more important to qualify to the major than to win it, because one's supposed to be way bigger. Well, similarly, right, it can't make sense that the most important round a T can win is the second round of the game on a force when the CT won the pistol. And in doing so, I tell you what, to be fair, I've never run the stats through. I might get someone to run the stats on that, what happens when that happens, because I feel like just anecdotally, it's caused a lot of big games. I will also say the other thing that skews that one is it's even worse if you have one of the superstars like a ZywOo or a Simple, because that guy on T with the AK that you buy in the Force just wins you the round so much more than a random player on Falcons like BOROS or something, you know. So there is that angle. Then the last thing I'll say is this. So I do think the economy is way bigger than everything else. I wouldn't even say MR12. My number one thing to Valve is change the economy, because if you do, MR12 itself would be better. Old MR12 didn't have this thing. And then lastly, people's whole reasoning for changing to MR12 was time length, right? The saddest thing is, this is where, when people are doing nerd stuff, they're sometimes just too late to get to the right info. Because I don't know how many of you saw this, but I believe it was Nero. It was one of those guys. It was either Nero or King Depth from HLTV. They actually looked into this, and something like a month or whatever after we'd already changed to MR12, they discovered that it wasn't even MR12 or 15 that was making the games go longer. It was just when Valve increased the fucking round timer. When they made the round last longer and the bomb timer went up 10 seconds. It turned out, no joke, that was the thing that made all the games last longer. And obviously that's something we've never done anything with. So I do think, to bring it all the way back, I actually do think there are a lot of options to compromise to make this situation better. I actually think what with the current scenario we have now is the worst implementation of MR12. Like, either fix the economy or just shorten the round length anyway, then he could also play more BO3s, by the way, or do something like... I can't remember what the last angle was, but yeah, you get the premise. And the last thing I'll say is this. The reason why, though, I will say I don't myself agree on the thing of like play to the normie crowd is because I actually think, even though you might initially make some decent changes that are like a reasonable compromise, not some crazy Faustian bargain, I think it eventually will become a Faustian bargain if you play to the normies. Like, the obvious example I would give would be, think of a sport like American football. I mean, I would say they've already done this. You actually will ruin a sport like that if you try to make it for casuals who don't understand the sport very well. Like, it's a very complicated sport for a reason. And if you're coming in sort of saying, yeah, but I don't want to understand all that, make it simple for me, you'll ruin what actually the purists loved about American football at that point in time. You know, I would say that's something that's happened to a lot of sports. So yeah, any final points on this one? We're moving on.
Well,
I think actually I'll just even speak from experience here, like as a viewer, like if I'm not working at an event, I actually used to not be able to really be great at watching 3 BO3 straight. And actually at this major in particular, I've just been streaming it. Like I've been just like co-streaming the whole thing, and I've just been watching. And I can watch 3 BO3s in sometimes under 9 hours, which is really it actually makes it so I can watch more games in a day, and I can learn more about more teams and get well-formulated opinions. And again, this is not like pro meta or anything like that necessarily, but in terms of actually being able to get the most well-rounded opinion of the most teams possible, MR12 has actually made that feasible with like a regular amount of effort put into it. Whereas before, it would actually take me maybe like, if I watch start to finish live 3 BO3s, that sometimes is actually like 12 hours. Like the difference between watching, 9 hours and 12 hours, it's not even comparable. Like people get it. Like, if I can watch that much Counter-Strike, I'm just going to know more. I'm going to have more enjoyment of the scene in general. And so there's a lot of things. And I will also say, we didn't even talk about this, the playing aspect. Getting like if you want to play a casual game and it's MR12, the commitment towards that, as opposed to feeling like you're in this hell cell with your teammates who are just griefing you the whole time. If it's MR12, it's actually a lot more bearable too. So there's a lot of reasons for the casual side that MR12 does make sense, even though I feel like to find the most fitting winner, you should probably have 15 rounds of play per half.
I'll say you can love it or hate it. I honestly don't really love it that much, but I'll take it. Teams now realize it's not about winning the round on CT. I kind of hate this again. It's not about winning the round. It's about winning the round with more than 3 players.
Yes.
That's all it matters about. That's why they're stacking everything. That's why they're doing all these gamble stacks. That's why I think that a lot of the maps that are getting played are maps where you get punished less for gamble stacking. If you're wrong, either you can retake or you can pivot like on Nuke. You can love it or hate it, but that does actually make even this back and forth T-pistol situation, I think it makes it a little bit less harmful, because teams go, well, we're just going to stack 3B, and if they go B, then we're losing. And teams were kind of moving towards that, but they're really on that now. And it feels like it is actually making CT economy not as much of a problem, but then Valve's just putting on a million T-sided maps, and I think that's just counter.
That's true as well. Yes, that is true.
Yes, I think this makes it awful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even one thing I always say is like the other thing about the game is even the maps that traditionally, like Nuke used to be mega CT sided. It isn't fucking mega CT sided out for ages now. Like you can get tons of T rounds. So yeah, I do also think the map pool as usual, the sad thing about Counter-Strike is it's never usually one factor. It's about 15 strands that you have to like unpick in it. So hence why just making it MR12 alone wasn't like the panacea. So right, Maui, what is your good point?
Yeah, my point is pretty self-serving here.
Oh, well, why break the habit of my lifetime? Okay.
This is incredibly self-serving.
What's this? My good point is Mauisnake stream on Twitch, so join me tomorrow and whatever. Fucking, I'm gone.
Yeah. No, the good point is like, I mean, I'm making it funny on purpose, because it's just that my good point is that the Americas region now for the RMR, as opposed to for the 2021 Stockholm Major, has become the Americas region, because now we share spots when going into the majors for South America and North America. And I mean, I'm saying this in a joking way, like, oh, it's good that we have Brazil now under the Americas banner for this, because now we have more slots going into the next major. I kind of want to like twist this point though, as opposed to just being completely selfless and that we're riding on the shoulders of Brazilian giants who have carried us to now have 7 slots at the upcoming major. I also just want to praise the fact that South America did so well in the Challenger event. Like, this is not the Challenger, you know what I mean? The opening stage.
Yeah,
like, the opening stage of the event, where the South American region had Furia, Pain, and Imperial all make it to the next stage because the quality of play that they had. I was shocked. Like, I'm just gonna say I was completely shocked. I was taken aback by the fact that those teams actually played as well as they did. And so it's the combination point that thank God they're part of the Americas, because now for the next Americas RMR, there will be 7 slots, so that, and to even expand this point further, this means that there will probably be a little bit more investment in both the South American and and North American region, because now investors, orgs know that there's a greater likelihood that your team will make it through, because obviously there's 2 more spots available. So not only am I just saying like, thank God they saved our asses, but also good on Brazil right now, because the teams in terms of like Imperial and Pain in particular, and I'm not even including Furia in this one, who just seem to survive barely based off of the quality of individual players, have been playing some insanely strong Counter-Strike. Like Big Azera's individual reads as an in-game leader in mid-rounds has made that team seem so well composed. So I just want to give credit to them. And on top of that, Imperial, I just feel like the right amount of veteran savvy along with young talent has made a team that has made like their fundamentals are weirdly strong for a team that has 2 rookies in No Way and Decency. But on top of that, I think Vinny has taken all of the parts of working with Fallen and Art and just made an incredibly strong team there. So it's kind of like half self-serving that thank God we got more slots because of the South American teams. But I'm also praising those teams for playing legitimately good Counter-Strike and also showing up teams like ENCE and teams like Apex, who to me, like Apex played horrible Counter-Strike. I'm not just trying to bag on them, but they are god awful to watch in terms of they're like one of the worst trading teams in tier 1 Counter-Strike period. Whereas Imperial, they play together. They play good team CS, as does Pain. So I'm glad that they made it through.
By the way, he literally even wrote that down, Vu, as it just said, South America is part of the Americas. That was just the good point. It's like, well, you are right, Mo, technically. So what do you think of this, Vu? What do you think of the South American carrying the Americas,
Furia,
apparently?
like, Furia, I'm not loving Furia, so I'm glad. I feel like Furia just got carried by Fallen somehow, forgetting what year it was and just actually just doing fucking amazing. They still have Art buying MP9s just randomly in the middle of the game. They have shit that's just not making any sense. Although I did really actually like Imperial, although I put them in my 0-3 because of Mauisnake. No, because of Mauisnake, because I watched their game against Gamer Legion. I was like, damn, Imperial's playing really well. I should change them out for Pain. And then Mauisnake earlier in the day was like, how many pick'ems do you have? I'm not giving you credit for being right on this. You can't change it this many times. So I left them as my 0-3 and I got fucked for it. I thought Imperial was playing really good. I mean, Phelps is finding amazing form. I think the team's playing really well together. And what was surprising to me is usually I feel like America's teams are typically behind the meta, but I feel like all of Brazilian teams or the South American teams, I don't know exactly the whatever, don't want to offend anybody. They were, I feel like, ahead of the meta even compared to the European teams. A lot of the European teams they were playing, they were doing really good reads, really good conditioning in against ENCE especially. I thought Imperial was really impressive. There's not much I can say bad if we ignore Furia about Imperial at least. Yeah, fuck, I agree.
Right, what I would say is this. I sort of agree overall. I will say the joke answer is, at the same time, like in this actual major right now, the only team you need to give a fuck about is Call, and they are North American. Like, none of these Brazilian teams are going to the playoffs. None of them are going to do anything if they go there. If any of them made there, they would get instantly crushed in the first round. It would be absolutely dog shit. Whereas actually, like Call, they're not exactly that much better, but at least they have a leash. At least they can play around him. So there's at least some hope there. But yeah, I agree. Obviously, if you put it this way, if you didn't have that, like, it would be fucking dire right now. Like, even if those America's teams came, they would have got bounced in the previous phase. Like, none of those, now M8, they wouldn't have gotten through. It just isn't plausible, I'm afraid, right now. So right now, you do need actually South America to carry the fucking region, especially for this thing with getting the extra slots, obviously. In terms of the actual teams, I mean, my joke would be this, Vu. So I'll give you the example. There's a classic episode of my favourite TV show, Seinfeld, and it's called The Opposite. And what George Costanza figures out, because he's the one who's always doing little scams and, you know, little grifts and stuff, is he figures out that he's done every wrong decision in his life. And so then he has an epiphany like, wait a minute, I should just do the opposite of every decision that comes to my mind. So what he does essentially, like he then immediately, for example, you know, just goes up and approaches a beautiful woman in a diner and tells her like, hey, I'm homeless and I live on my own or whatever. And then she's like, wow, I'm victorious. So it like works, you know, because obviously the gag is that it's actually like for this one episode, it's working and everything he's doing is perfect because he's doing the right. The reason I bring that up is my joke would be that's why Vinny's so good at calling, because logically he just got to listen to how Art IGLs and how Fallen IGLs, and he just thinks what would they do and then does the opposite. And that's why it actually works. As a result, he does strong fundamental calls. That makes sense. He makes use of his pieces and he doesn't steal all the resources from them to prop up his own aging, fucking withered career so he can make another 700k and 100k on the side hustle from Fallen Gear. Oh, sorry, did I make that too split? Whichever of the players I was referring to that you previously played. Yeah, that'd be the joke. Because actually, no joke, he actually is doing a pretty good job. And that's actually where I will start with my downside of the Americas, which is the upside is this. Bro, I was telling this to Maui on the stream. I actually do think the raw talent base in Brazil is fucking mad underrated. Because as you see, even though Furia has like some of the big names, the rest of the teams just have spread out talent. Like none of the rest of them. It's not like the old days when we had Luminosity and Immortals and it was like they were the tiers of the next two players. No. Now, when you're outside of Furia, you have like 20 players that could be in a tier 1 team. But the problem is there's like 2 in one team, 3 in the other. And then you have a mixture, sadly. You've got to get rid of some of the boomers. Some of the old ones aren't actually that good anymore. They should be replaced by the youngsters, the Insanies of the world, the Zevis of the world. Should replace fucking some of these players that were once legends but aren't that good anymore. They're just hanging on. They're never going to be as good. And actually, the reason why Vinny's a big deal is because right now, Vinny and Big Azira are the only reason to have any hope for Brazilian Counter-Strike. And you might think, wow, that's it. Because IGL is their worst role, guys. Like, I memed about it there, but there's a reason people keep handing Fallen giant 5-figure-a-month fucking salary contracts. It's not because they actually think right now, gun to their head, he's amazing. It's like he's just the one who's done the role the most, and everyone respects him. So they're just kind of like praying he sort of goes back to 2017 or something. But it doesn't happen. Meanwhile, Vinny and Big Azira are the only people actually who seem like they actually are a competent IGL, and IGL is the most under fucking represented role in that whole region as far as I can tell. It seems like a role, maybe it's like, and no one wants to do it. And so you have like a million aggressive riflers, by the way. You have a bazillion of them. You have so many players that could make up all the other skill positions, but you just don't have IGL. So if you can get those two players into top teams, and maybe Vinny could just stay there and get better talents, actually, then you could actually, for real, have some solid, like you could have another major where in the top 16 there are 2 or 3 Brazilian teams, but for real, not just because like they had a good or one-off. They could actually be for real in that point in time. And obviously, we'll get to it later, but I would like a world where maybe a Furia could even do this because they've already got the Queseratos. Like, if you've already got Queseratos, just slot an IGL in there. We can get cooking immediately, but we'll get to that one later. Get to that point later. Right, what I would do is this then. Then we'll go to my good point. And I've actually got a very simple one. I was thinking about this while I was watching this major. I'll tell you what the good news is. The good news is the AWP is back. You know all that whining for the first 3 months about how like the AWP was never going to be as good. Remember, the problem was it had already been nerfed at the end of CSGO where it had like the smaller clip size and stuff. So everyone whined for the first few months, especially all the AWPers, like, oh, it's unfair and the fucking sync and stuff. Right, here's all you need to know. If you go and look at the stats of the major right now in this phase, 4 of the top 7 players are AWPers and the top 2 are both AWPers. So of the top 7 players, Shiro, Jim, this is in descending order, Torji and Wonderful are 4 of the top 7 players in this tournament, right? Aside from Jim, who's the IGL and does a bit weird, the others are all just the primary AWPer of their team who has the resources funneled into them and uses the gun, a la the old school way of setting up an AWPer, and they're all really good. And as a result, all of their teams are mixing it up right now and doing better than expected and beating the top teams. The reason why I think that is really good is because I actually am going to say something positive about CS2 that I don't think a lot of people have ever come to this conclusion. I actually think CS2 might be the best version of Counter-Strike for balance between the AWP and the rifles. Like, they're both really strong right now, but they're not overpoweringly strong in either regard. And I think finally it almost makes sense. Like, now, if you have like an insane AWPer, they can dominate the game, but it's not like the 11th best tier 1 AWPer dominates the game. Like, I think did used to happen at the end of CSGO. I did think that role was a bit boosted. It's why I also thought we did eventually give too many MVPs to people just because AWP does the plus-minus stat and it looks more OP. Meanwhile, maybe the player winning the round was some like beast second in rifler who just died more. I do think we skewed the game. So I like the AWP to be back, but I also want it to be like not it's automatically the best. I think it's like what I want. I like things in games that you can express skill, but you make it so it's harder to do it the more powerful it is. I don't want it to be easy like a broken champion in a MOBA. It's just you press the button. I want it to be like, yeah, you can do a lot if you're really good. So I kind of like what the AWP balance is now. I think it's pretty good.
I don't know if I would think the AWP is back. The problem I have with
why you shit with the AWP or something? Give me the reason why. Why?
No. The problem I have with CS2 is that I think the AWP was up until I think the AWP is extremely important because when you look at CS2 so far, what we've seen is whichever team has players that are just shooting better seem to be winning way more often than they should because the AWP is a strategic gun. Sure. If you want a rifler to do something, you have to let them like do their thing. They have to have their own kind of play like leeway because you have to play your own style. You have an AWP, you can say AWP go here, like skedoodle. Just go here, shoot, and you're going to be a part of our strategy. We know you're going to hit the shot. We know you're going to control this area. We're good to go. And then you don't have shit like teams are like, well, we know they're not opping because they can't afford one. So we're just going to swing outside on nuke with 4 riflers, and whoever shoots the other team in the head better is going to win. It's like, I fucking hate that. I really, really hate that. And so, yeah, if we can find a time where the op, because the op does actually, a lot of the Brazilian teams I noticed are like forcing out ops nonstop. Maybe teams are realizing that, yeah, actually buying the op is better. But I felt like the op is just way too weak for almost the entirety of CS2, just in the inability to buy it or the inability to prioritize buying the op. But yeah,
you still think so? It's still too weak for you?
Yeah, I mean, the op itself isn't too weak. It's just the economy that's.
By the way, I will say,
Yeah.
I even thought in CSGO, the number one change I would make was always lower the price of the op. I wouldn't change anything else. I just always thought it is prohibitively priced.
I actually think that might be the biggest solution. You'd lower the price to like 4,500 or something, so teams can actually buy it if they lose pistol round, and that solves everything to me. Because I don't think the op is too weak. I think the op is right, but teams aren't able to buy it unless they're forcing around it, basically.
And you also, by the way, will technically get less op saves if it's a cheaper gun, because then someone won't have to save always. They'll have the money in the bank. So yeah, true.
That's a cool point. That's a cool idea. I never really considered lowering the price of the op. It's just that I guess I'm so conditioned to think that it's a little too strong from CSGO. So if we lowered the price of it, I just fear that we would see more double op setups on CT. I guess they have their drawbacks, but I don't necessarily.
It's a big gamble though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're not retaking with that thing, but then I also don't want to watch people save the op more. You know, like that's just my least favorite thing. It's such a stat padding thing where we have to now factor that into analysis where it's like, oh, yeah, Shiro got he was 18 and 10, but in a losing effort, and 12 of those were exit frags. So it's like it's not really that impressive because he used to always do that. So I mean, the op being back in general, though, that kind of point, yeah, I think the thing is that the best oppers in the world have actually shown that that gun is reliable now. Like, I don't think you can really make the excuse anymore that it's the gun or the game that's necessarily bringing people down on it. Yeah, the economy is making it so it doesn't fall into the hands of everybody that wants to use it all the time. But if the gun were so powerful, we wouldn't have this whole complaint about Cloud9 sucking so much, because obviously against the top team, they get out op most of the time. And it's also something that's kind of damning to I think like what's the one weird thing about the gun is like if it is good right now, but it's like ZywOo is still not using it even at this event for me. Like why is he has 7 op kills in the 3 maps played right now for Vitality, and it's making me really worried about Vitality. And I feel like he didn't adopt the gun as openly as some people like Shiro and Jame and Monacy, who have now shown that you should be the best player in the server by a large margin. And even rating wise, like Spinks is outclassing him now because yeah, he's basically just rifling. And that's probably because they don't want him to rifle as much. I don't need to go on a ZywOo tangent. I just need to I don't know why that has to slip in all the time, but basically like it's just yeah. For people that want to see good op play, it does kind of ring, as Vu said, where it seems like a tactical thing. I like that Kassad actually had an idea about the meta when he came on to my stream, where he was saying like the best way to use smokes now is like a rifle player throws a smoke or a nade at a smoke, they break it, and while the op player is scoped onto that angle, because then they can hit a nice flick shot, and it doesn't have that delay or inconsistency with what you see versus where the bullet's going that happened in the beginning of CS2. No, you can actually just shoot where the smoke broke, and then you're gonna hit some nice flick shots. So it's good now. It's good now. Anybody that thinks it isn't good is just bad with it.
I like the way the only thing that doesn't allow Maui to actually acknowledge it's good is like Lord ZywOo hasn't touched his fucking... We haven't touched your delicious pie, Lord ZywOo. Is there something wrong with it? Like, now Maui can't eat it either. He's just stressed. Like, is it wrong? Should I eat the pie? I'm like, fuck. Like, listen, mate, watch Wonderful. He's totally fine with it. You don't have to worry about your boy ZywOo. At the moment, ZywOo doesn't...
not my boy.
ZywOo doesn't even eat or sleep at the moment. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's losing. He's crawling up the walls. He knows that he's a fraud.
I'm always looking for slights on ZywOo, and it's that he can't op right now. That's the biggest slight. He doesn't pick it up, and he should. His team would be better. His team would definitely be better if he picked it up more.
Right. Then I think that's it, isn't it? We're moving on to the bad?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. What is your bad, Vu?
What was my bad?
It was about Inferno and Valve balancing choices, apparently.
One of the biggest problems, Inferno's just terrible. I think everyone agrees on that. But the problem I have is with Valve's balancing choices, in that they changed the spawns so close to the major. They didn't even run with the new spawns in the America's RMR. They ran with the old spawns. Then they immediately, that one of the things that's missed out on is the America's RMR. Then all these teams from the America's RMR, Liquid included, fly over to Blast next day, I think, play with the new patch, with new spawns that they haven't had any chance to practice and jet lagged, and then they go straight from there. What, like half a week later, they're at the opening stage of the major now. I mean, except for Liquid because they're shit. But you know, I don't understand the point. And not only that, but actually, I kind of respect the idea that with MR12, you want to lower the variance in spawns. So you basically pull the spawns together. And on Mirage, for example, you still have the same, I forget how many, but it's the same percent of your spawns can go for a cat jump. It's like 2 of 5 instead of like 5 of 17 or whatever,
Right.
something like that. It's the same percent, which is perfect. That's exactly what you want. You just lower the variance, but you still have the exact same gameplay style. But then they added spawns on Anubis. I don't. What the fuck are they doing? And so close to the major, it doesn't make any sense. And then they're just but they're also not fixing Inferno. You would think they would fix Inferno right before the major. That would be a pretty important thing to do. But they're just like leave it in this fucking ridiculous state. Oh, I can't say enough bad things about Valve's balancing decisions. They just make no sense. They just don't. They don't add up. They're all different.
Okay, a lot of things here. I would actually want to ask you first what you think, because we're seeing less and less Inferno at Tier 1 events every single time. It feels like in the BO1 opening stage of the opening stage, I don't think we saw Inferno at all played in the BO1s, if I remember correctly.
I think Chad did a graphic on Twitter that showed it was either the last or the second to last played map at the major, after the first phase or something like that.
And but I think it was played in the first phase only as like map 3s or first picks kind of thing. Like it wasn't, like people weren't letting it go down in a, you get what I mean? Like in the veto. So Vu, like, I mean, when I see Inferno played, or like, I feel like people don't like it because you can't, like, retaking, it's the worst map to retake on by far. And like, if you have even a 3v2 advantage for CTs on a retake on either A or B feels so horrible. So beyond retaking, and I would say like also sometimes if you're winging a nade, like if you're just throwing a smoke on the ground, there's just random textures that it can bounce off of and either stop it or make it bounce into like some weird random area. Are there other things that I'm missing for why Inferno is not played right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes into the gamble stacking thing. If you're watching the Furia versus Ecstatic game, you can see there's a couple times they just walk straight into a stack, and I feel like it's kind of hard, especially if you're playing into the late round, to sniff out. Fallen gets into Arch in one round, and he's like, they're stacking one of the bomb sites here, but we got 25 seconds, so I hope they're stacking B because we're going A now, and then they just get fucking destroyed. So I don't know if there's necessarily a fix to that. They need to make Banana wider. Banana just feels horrific. But not only that, I actually think the smokes taking that extra second to bloom on a molly is low-key making everyone hate Inferno 10 times more, because now you're guaranteed 30 damage from a molly if it lands on top of you. There's almost nothing you can do about it. Yeah, I mean, that would be the first 2 steps. Make Banana wider so that teams can't just molly you out so easily, and fix this delay. I mean, that's for every map, but Inferno specifically, you have mollies land on you all the time.
Oh, also that one thing that you can do where there's a smoke and then there's a molly next to the smoke, and you can actually stand in the pixel between the smoke and the molly, see through it, and then like that feels like a Banana fight specialty where it's like, oh, I mollied right in front of my smoke, the guy shouldn't be there. Oh, I just get shot because I swung right into the guy. It's like you need, it's just yeah. Some of the little mechanics in the game make Inferno feel worse beyond the fact that little map changes. I think like the meta has now just gotten to a point where if you're not gamble stacking, you're failing.
I will actually agree and disagree. Here's why. Because if I look at it relative to what CS2 is, and especially what the old Inferno was in CSGO, I do think it's a problem. Like, I think one of the problems in this discussion is the amount of people who talk like CS2 is CSGO is mental. Like, the map literally looks and is different. Like, the architecture is even different. Yes, it has the most basic broad strokes, but I'll give you a quick example of why you can't, if you haven't thought about it, just act like it's identical. Because classically, when CS CSGO got really big, you had a bunch of people where when it became like 2016, where it was on TV and there was like millions of dollars for the major and people heard that like people are getting paid 20K a month, you had all these people come back in the industry who were old 1.6 players. And mate, there were some mega embarrassing convos I had privately where they were telling me stuff like they would watch a game at a tournament with me on like a big screen and they would watch people play Dust 2 and they would literally try to make meta reads based on what 1.6 Dust 2 was like. So you know how in Dust 2, if anyone played it in 1.6, as CT, you used to just hold the catwalk on the catwalk and you would just dodge nades and you would like sort of time when they're going to come. Obviously in CSGO, no one ever did that. So these idiots were making like reads like, well, they don't even understand how to control it. Like you've got to lock them off there. You've got to have the one guy. And I had to sort of tell them like, look, I know the map looks the same to you, but the game fundamentally has different mechanics. The smokes are different. And even if it like roughly looks the same, it's not identical architecture. Like you can't have the same boosts and the flash is affected differently in the bounces of the nades. I said, there's enough things different that you don't realize. You think you know this map, but you don't. So I'd say, first of all, I think people do the same thing with Inferno. Like one of the first things I would change is I would absolutely take some of the things they just think look sick, bruh. And I would just go back to a way more simplistic, pared down version of Inferno. I already think that's an issue. Like I already hated some of the things they had in that fucking B site anyway that can distract you and fucking stupid little graphical things. Like who the fuck would ever put graphical things that move in a game where half the time as a pro, you sit like this and you're just doing like fucking edge detection like that. And you're going to put like, it's bad enough in CSGO, guys, they had fucking actual chickens running out on the map. So the AWP, if people don't know, at the first CSGO major, Kenny S shot a chicken thinking it was a fucking guy coming out of like Dust 2 doors or whatever, the fucking like B tunnels. He just shot a chicken because that used to be Counter-Strike. He just saw something and the joke is he's so fast he couldn't like, you know, fucking unshoot it because he shot the bullet already because he's Kenny S, isn't he? So like I would just say, first of all, change the architecture. That's a big issue. Then I'll tell you one you didn't mention, which is the smokes are just so much more powerful now. Yeah, you can't ever retake because those are fucking if you don't have counter utility, this is two parts. It's the smokes are insanely strong. If you don't have any counter util, there's no point even going through it. You'll just be dead immediately. And then secondly, that CT punishing economy is the worst on Inferno. That is the map where you already, in old versions of CS, used to save if you had an AWPer anyway. Now you're just incentivized to save. Unless you have a man advantage, why would you just risk losing all the guns and the round? And now a CT, you're double fucked. Instead, what you do is when you have 2 or 3 people left, if you don't get the first kill in 5 seconds, you save. And the joke is, if it's like VP and Jame, he's already like at the edge of the corner, like jiggle pick it to save completely, because that's just who he is. So I do think as a map, it is the worst map for saving, not even unjustifiably, just all the time now. And it has actually ruined the game. But I will ask this question to both of you. If we're going to go this hard and talk like Infernos, like you can't even watch it, it's just garbage, man. I would still watch an Inferno game any day over a fucking Vertigo game. Like that's what I don't get about people telling me Overpass and Inferno suck. Vertigo is still in the fucking meta. Like, Vertigo is like someone fucking only had like an hour left and he thought he had a week left on his homework and he just submitted the map. It's like, bro, you made the spawns and the sites and forgot to put anything between them. There are just stairs. I'm going upstairs or a ramp. And that's why that joke people made at the beginning, it's like fucking like bomb hold simulator or retail. It is. That's all it is. It's actually for real. I think that I have always said Vertigo isn't even Counter-Strike to me. Though Counter-Strike has an analogy that's comparable to RTS. When you're on the T side, it's not just about are you in the spawn, are they in the sites? That's shit. That's why that original version of Overpass sucked, where people could just sit in the fucking A site and they never had to ever come out. What you want, this is why I love Overpass, is you want enough room between that then there's a game where before you even get to the sites, we can fight you early, we can take advanced positions, or we can go back and now you have to use loads of utility to get to us. And then there's that like dynamic back and forth of, do you have the util? Do we not? Do we send a scout? Do we stay in the site? Vertigo doesn't have any of that. It's just you're in the sites or you just have fighting. That's it. There's not, and I actually do think, even though people get hyped of like, oh my God, because like a retake, there's only 3 seconds left, they have to run in. It's like, that's just a shooting gallery. What is that? That's not Counter-Strike. So as much as I'll agree with you, I do think Inferno in CS2 is not the Inferno that I loved from CSGO. The problem I have is like Vertigo still exists, guys. There is still that in the meta. Like, are you going to tell me Inferno's worse than Vertigo? You can go ahead if you want.
I pray Vertigo gets removed and not Inferno.
Fair enough.
And they try and fix Inferno.
Because
I feel like, I've said before, I feel like the reason Vertigo's playing is because you get punished. One of the main reasons you get punished less for these gamble stacks that everyone's doing. Inferno, you get punished the absolute most. And so it's basically a reaction to the economy. It's not because Inferno or Vertigo is necessarily a good map. it's like it's just inoffensive. People don't hate it. Everyone hates Inferno because of the way you have to play around it. But somehow Valve, it's like Vertigo. Someone had their kid on that map or something. Like, why is this map? It's been the least played map every year forever in the top 20 forever. Why is it not gone?
Yeah, but that's the problem. Y'all already made them take Dust 2 out. Now they're going to take Inferno too. Like, eventually there's going to be no CS maps left. We're going to be on fucking Roblox. What are we going to be doing at that point in time? Or we could just play on Art's favourite map, DE_Lusional. Whatever. It's whatever it is. Right. Are we ready to move on now, Maui? What is your bad point?
My bad point, inspired by Yenko himself, is the fact that G2's vetoing at majors is just so consistently bad.
Sure.
They just seem to never. I don't know if they ever understand their opponent's weaknesses or strengths, or they just go into every game in isolation and just say we're gonna play our own game. Because so far, like, let's just remind ourselves how Nico played his final major moment of CSGO. It was on probably his worst map in CSGO, which was Vertigo. And so I have to blame, and there's like, at this point, we have to just kind of consider what is the consistent factor between this team and that team, because they don't have the same coach, but they have the same in-game leader who is probably responsible for calling some of these vetoes. And I feel like I've been between Thorin, Kassad, myself, even Yenko, I feel like I've been probably singing the praises of Hooksy the most, but now I'm seeing a trend where the vetoing for him is actually rather fraudulent, and it's almost like anti-preparatory. Like, it's actually actively hurting them because, again, I remember the Fnatic game where they played Vertigo as the map number 3. Nuke was still right there. We all knew that G2 had a great nuke for themselves, but for whatever reason, they played Fnatic on it. They lost. Fnatic didn't even make it to the playoffs, by the way. And now, already in this major, they've played 3 games so far. They're 1-2 in the major as of the time of this recording. And with their vetoes, they have played today they just played Anubis versus Cloud9. Cloud9 are trying desperately to get Anubis into every single series that they play. It has been their first pick for months now, and it is the only map that they have an exceptional win rate on. And it's a map where Electronic is one of the best players in the world on. And in fact, the other map that was available in the veto for them, I mean, things they could have done differently in the veto, they like banning Mirage. G2 in this, they banned Mirage, they banned Ancient, they banned Overpass. Their other options were they could have banned, I mean, Cloud9 had the decision at the very end to ban between Nuke and Anubis. And knowing Cloud9, they're always going to try to go to that map. And so G2, they've been banning Mirage lately. I understand it. Overpass historically hasn't actually been a great map for Nico. In fact, he generally tried to avoid it. I feel like the entire Serbian scene has tried avoiding Overpass since its inception, actually, and that's actually kind of famous. But they actually beat Heroic on it at Katowice, and also they could have left Ancient in the pool, where they beat FaZe very recently at the Copenhagen RMR. They beat FaZe on that map, and they went away from it. And these are maps where Cloud9 fall off pretty hard, so they could have actually chosen either of these maps. Yenko thought that it was going to be Ancient being left in along with Nuke. I would have expected that you would never leave Anubis against Cloud9, so I could have seen them going a couple different directions on that map. So I just, for one, feel like you could have either banned, you could have left an Overpass and Nuke, or you could have left Ancient and Nuke, and they went actually and left Anubis and Nuke against them. And I just feel like that just shows such a strong lack of preparation against a team that is now world class on it. Like, Cloud9, they don't, like, the only thing we say about this team over and over again is they can beat you, but they don't have an AWPer that can go toe-to-toe with your AWPer. And Anubis is just one of those maps where an AWP is so irrelevant. Like, maybe you don't want to play Overpass because you're lacking in the AWP differential. Or, I mean, no, actually, I'm sorry. You probably, if you are Cloud9, you probably don't want to play Overpass also because m0NESY should just farm you on that map. And also on Ancient, like, m0NESY is sick on that map too. Like, I don't understand why they wanted to leave Anubis there. And so also beyond that, they left in the BO1s, they left Nuke versus Na'Vi. And it feels like maybe I'm just kind of having this 2020 hindsight for them, but they left Nuke, which is where EMA and farmed Na'Vi in the Blast World Finals. Like, they're doing these moves with their veto right now that to me are just so bad. They're just so catastrophically bad. And I feel like Thorin, you might end up being right with G2 not qualifying to the next stage or to the playoffs of the major. And I don't think it's actually down to the players anymore, because I actually think Nex has been doing his role just fine. I think Nico has caught up to speed quite a bit in terms of CS2, even though he had a bad start in it. Monacy is one of the best players in the game at that game at CS2, and yet they're vetoing is so piss poor that it might cost G2 this entire event, and that's something you do before you even load up to the server.
I wanted to come in. I almost came in, and I was like, one of my good points might be HooXi, in that I don't know if he's necessarily to blame for a lot of the problems when nearly every big series they lose, someone shits the bed. It's either Nico, usually not Monacy, but Nico and Hunter shit the bed in almost every big loss they have. Not Nexa, and well, sometimes HooXi, but what are you expecting? And then if you look at the G2 game versus Na'Vi, Nexa, he didn't do that well, but he actually did really fucking well. On their T side as a lobby lurk was fucking incredible. He won them several rounds on his own, forcing rotates by getting a pick that he's not expected to get. But then he just got out-called in the last few. They had like 4 gun rounds in the last 5 rounds. They were up like 12-8 or something, and they lost all of them. Just got absolutely out-called by Alexi B. And that was like, okay, so maybe HooXi is the problem, because you're up CT side nuke. You should be winning fine, and just every stack they went for, Alexi B saw it coming, avoided it, and every game plan Na'Vi had was just way miles ahead of G2's game plan. So. Yeah, I'm starting to think HooXi might be the problem, even though I do give him some slack, because teams with this level of talent usually don't have this level of inconsistency in their talent.
The big problem,
only positive,
big problem I have with this topic goes like this. Normally, I'll always give leeway to teams, because this is the main area that teams used to criticize me, is obviously I can only watch the officials. Like, even though, by the way, you can, if you want, just message pros, and some of them will tell you how things are going in scrims. But I've just found personally, I always used to tell Chad this, because I know he's even actually predicted people to win majors. Spoiler, he predicted Team Liquid to win some, so it didn't work out. Problem is, if you hear that hype before the tournament, like, this guy, they're murking everyone, this team's insane. Like, unfortunately, I've just found that's actually almost got zero correlation to whether they actually do well at the event or not. Like, so I personally try to ignore that. So I just go off officials, but it means that you will end up, when you look at like official records and you remember the big games they played, you will, of course, sometimes be thinking of like 2 months ago when a team's great on a map. And what they're basically telling you is like, yeah, but we'll spent the last month, like we fell off in practices, so we've worked all our hours on this other map. Like maybe we'll put our hours in Mirage instead or something. And so there is the element that I'll always leave some leeway, that maybe they know things we don't when they do the veto. I agree with Maui though. I was going to even bring that up myself if you didn't reference it, that obviously this is how the last major ended. That's how the last major of CSGO ended, was you took a fucking super team, they're JKS back then, remember, and you ran it into the ground by vetoing into one of your worst maps, one of the opponent's best maps, and your star player's worst map. And then you literally, like, that's why, by the way, to this day, it shows you how powerful, like, tribalism is. That when people talk about Kassad hating HooXi, they act like he hates him the second he wins the tournament. Like, they act like he didn't tweet it. By the way, that's one of the most legit call-outs I've ever seen, assuming HooXi has any say in the veto. Because people also did that. They were like, but do we know if HooXi does this? Then what does he fucking do, you idiot? People always do that. It's like managers on sports teams. A manager isn't bad because the team's doing badly. But I'll tell you one thing I can certainly say, he doesn't work. He doesn't work with this team, does he? Like, I've got to change him. So I've never understood that angle. Like, but maybe he isn't the one. Then he's not doing his job by default, is he? So to me, the vetoing still is semi-ass. And I'll just say it straight up. One of the reasons I always said G2 wouldn't have an era, even when they were winning Katowice, Blast World Finals and Cologne, is because if you ever looked, their map pool just looked good because they were winning all those series in a row. If you ever actually watched them play, they were good on about like 3.5 maps in the map pool. And it was just individual performances. That's why I always said the JKS kick was very stupid in my opinion, because I don't care what they say about like ego or maybe he cost a lot of money. Yeah, but here's the difference. You had a 4th player, because Hunter used to be pretty good back then too. You had a 4th player who can just fuck around and drop a 20 bomb on a random map. That will get you so many extra deep tournament finishes than when you have like Nexa and Hunter both shit the bed. Like, you're just not going to get it. At that point in time, HooXi would have to be twice as good as he used to be, and then he'd have to veto like a motherfucker. Because I'll tell you what, when you don't have that firepower, Also, your map pool is going to look a lot shitter. Now we're just going to have to go off what you actually are good on, fundamentally in Counter-Strike. What can you actually call strats on? What can you make adjustments on? And as you're seeing, I'm just saying it straight up, the whole time Huxley was there, he had JKS. Remember, I always pointed that out. It wasn't like Alexi B had JKS and then shit the bed. He had Jax. Luxy got JKS, won those tournaments, did nothing at majors, and now he doesn't have JKS and he does nothing anywhere. So I'm just going to say it, that's why in general, it's not just a G2 take. I think the Huxley era is over. Spoiler, I will be the one tweeting at Huxley when they get eliminated from this tournament in the Swiss system, saying he should be fired. Because it's a rare instance of where I actually think he should. And also, since he's decided to join in on that banter, fair game. He did that. He decided to join fucking me and Kassad in the toxicity pool. Well, what do you know, motherfucker? We are anti-corrosive. You aren't. You will fucking melt, my son. So you know what? You can get to that ecstatic scene sooner than ever, because you're going to be there real soon. So there is that one. And also, I'll just throw this in there, even though this isn't even a Huxley point. I'll make one last point about Huxley, which goes like this. It's what I always say to Maui, which is everyone, when he wins, goes, well, he's good enough to be on G2. Here's all you need to know. He has never been in a single roster rumor ever the entire time, as far as I can tell. No one's ever even suggested, is Astralis going to bring Huxley in? No one even spitballs Huxley moves. The joke is even Huxley probably doesn't. So I think once he does get removed, by the way, you also just never see him back in the top team again. He will just be like an all right leader. He'll be like the newest Cillian, basically. Well, that's probably too harsh because he's not even in the scene. But he'll be like I say, he'll be on an ecstatic tier team. He'll just be on an OK team, basically. He'll be irrelevant. Right. I will say on the actual G2 one, though, I do agree, because the problem with their vetoing is their vetoing screams to me, we're just vetoing our own comfort based on scrims recently. Like, I don't believe they're actually thinking we're picking the right team map to go into the opponent. And by the way, that is a terrible sign, because the top teams, that's exactly what you're thinking of at a major. You're thinking, let me put you on a weak map because I'm better than you. They're going, we better get to our comfort maps because I'm scared, actually. That's what it feels like. And you see how they play. Because I agree with both of those, right? Cloud9 on Anubis. Bro, you just gave them like a free pass. Like, actually, here you go. You don't need to use the op today. Thank you. Mate, that's my nightmare to actually be forced onto like overpassing that scenario. By the way, even dog shit, like there's so many maps that you could just by cynically playing. And you, not only that, they don't have an AWPer. You have the best AWPer. Like, if Huxley can't see that with his personnel, then he is blind. He has no business being the IGL of this team. Like, he can't even see the pieces he has and how best to use them. And then lastly, the Na'Vi nuke one I also think is mad, because Na'Vi themselves are mega variable based on the map they're on. And you actually put them on a map there where they like that map quite clearly. And you saw that actually, even when you were leading, they were never that uncomfortable. They were able to get right back in the game because you stupidly vetoed for your own comfort, I would guess. So I think this is one of the worst aspects of the team. And the problem is, I think it already existed when JKS was there, but the JKS factor and the fact that Hunter and Nico both collectively played better the whole time just meant that, like, you just didn't lose some of the games. You would just win it. By the way, notice G2 also used to win a lot of close games as well. They would win tons of them because they had all the stars. So I think all of those things are gone from G2 now, and sadly you're just going to see them gradually get picked apart and unravel and all that jazz of like, yeah, but next like does more for the team. Yeah, well, you can go and pick up the fucking P45s for your candy because it's not fucking working out, is it? Right.
I don't know why. I always thought the reasoning behind Nexa was you bring in Nexa and then it's like, oh, Huxley, maybe you don't call for a little bit. We'll just try Nexa calling. Things aren't going well. We'll try him out. And then, oh, would you look at that? Nexa's our caller and Huxley's just bad at the game. We'll replace him. I don't know why that's the only explanation I had that made any sense, but it's not happening apparently.
Oh no, here's what's toxic. I also did wonder if that's what was going to happen. Now I hope that's what's going to happen. Now I actually, for real, Nico, please be the God Emperor. Please take over. Be a tyrant. Get Nexa in a room with it, Hunter, and go, right, listen, Russians have a connection with Serbians anyway, so once you can figure it out, we're getting Madden as soon as possible, and Nexa, you're the IGL. Nico, it is your dream team, bruh. Like, just make it at this point in time. Like, especially, by the way, since you know why I've actually turned the corner on the Nico thing? Because I've just learned if he doesn't like playing with fucking Carrigan, Alexi B, JK, at that point in time, bruh, you know what? Maybe you should just play with your friends. Maybe you like Shocks. Maybe you have to play with your friends. Maybe that's the only thing that makes you the better. And if that's true, you are so good like Shocks, then I can handle it. If it means it's better than you being 80% the same player and then having these weird issues and weird mind games and getting mad at everyone, maybe you should just do it. Maybe that's just the best approach and we'll enjoy you playing CS. Right, fuck it then. Let's go on. My point is this one. I didn't make it Furia, But my bad point, I'm going to pick one person, and it isn't Fallen. It's got to be fucking Art, guys. It has to be Art. It's not even Furia. And the reason why I say it's not Furia is because this is actually something that is pissing me off. Now that Fallen isn't the IGL, look, he's not a great AWPer either, and he'll have the odd map that carries, but spoiler, you wouldn't get as excited about a random BO1 carry from Fallen if he was a top AWPer, guys. You're doing that because you know that's not the expectation. So already you know he's not a top AWPer. But luckily, it's not like there's loads of AWPers you'd replace him with. Like, there's every guy doesn't have the experience. There's a whole bunch of them that you wouldn't. Henny's fucking a million years old himself and no one knows his motivation. So actually Fallen, bearing in mind you in theory was supposed to have a strong rifle core in this team, you could probably get away with Fallen like this. The problem you have is your IGL. And that's been the problem in Furia for fucking years now. Art, not only individually, is just worse than he used to be. That player that came along in 2019, then for like the first year or so of online, that used to be a fucking very exciting player. That was one of my favourite players in Counter-Strike to watch. Because he really was like redefining how to do those psycho aggro pushes, how to do like a smoke push. It was actually fucking amazing, the shit he was doing. But the problem is, it's like Stewie 2K. It just became a gimmick and they just kept doing it till the end of time. And like he never had any development beyond that. And the worst thing is, IGLing, if he was ever good at it, that was a long time ago now. I think the last few, like I actually think the most criminal thing about that Furia run at Rio in 2022 is that was when their team used to still frag more than just Queserato. And even then they could barely actually get into a final, and they never won a trophy. Everyone knows that they've never won a single fucking trophy that anyone cared about. And the saddest thing is, right now, if you're them, bro, you have one of the absolute best players in the world in Queserato. Even Yuri is all right. He's not the star he used to be. He's all right, though. Like, if you actually look at this team, it should be so much better. And the one person I think individually doesn't play that well, I think he doesn't seem to IGL very well. And he just seems like a negative. It's just Art. Like, I just don't get what they're doing at this point in the team, you know. I would genuinely move on from it if I were them.
You want to start?
No, you.
Okay. Okay, so I feel like everything would just be better if this were Biguzera. Like, everything would just be so much better for Furia if they had even Vinny instead. If they actually, instead of benching Vinny when they did, if they actually just somehow developed him as an in-game leader. Obviously, I don't think he probably would have became the leader he is today if he had never played under Fallen. But if we basically could just get Vinny or Art, or Vinny or Biguzera for Art, then this team is just really cooking, really cooking, because even Cello has actually really improved in his role. Because the main thing that I was really concerned about with this move where they got rid of drop and they got rid of safe and they brought in Fallen, they brought in Cello, was that like Cello was the best player on Imperial, but he also didn't play any of the roles that dropped it, and they basically just one for one put him in those positions. But man, he's actually learned. He's actually gotten better as an anchor. I actually don't really have to doubt his ability if they're throwing an exec at him. He knows how to throw some counter utility. He can play behind a piece of cover, wait for a support flash, then go for the swing. Things that he was giving up his life too early before, but he's improved. Queserato is still the same player that you always want him to be. Yuri is still a pretty strong player. He's not like 2021 Yuri necessarily, but he still can contribute with the odd game where he's dropping like 23 kills. And I'd say on average, he's still playing above average as a professional player. But Art's calling, and the way that Art also just so easily gives his life away in needless positions is so frustrating. Because it would be one thing if I felt like the mid-rounding was bad for Furia, or maybe their calls out of spawn were just getting stuffed too often. But it's that even when they're in a man advantage situation, Art will still find a knack or a way every single time to push a smoke when they're in a post plant position. I saw moments when they were in retakes and he would just, for no reason, you'd be in a 4v2 position and he would just walk through a smoke. And it's like, I got mad at Cadian at the major when he was in a 3v2, and I was like, are you playing as the main character right now? Because he swung in a fairly 50-50 situation, but he just didn't need to do it, and he could have played the numbers, and he could have actually kept his team in a winning position, but instead he threw his life away. Art does it every single round. If I had the same vitriol that I had for Cadian in that moment, that I had like all the time for Art, I would lose my mind. I would probably just have to not watch a Furia game for fear that my blood pressure would be too high and I just keel over and die, because he is consistently doing the most boneheaded play possible every single round, and it is throwing away these advantages that his team is fighting tooth and nail to earn because the calling is subpar. He's like, you're basically putting so much weight on the shoulders of people like K-Serato, Yuri, the odd moment from Cello, even Fallen, and you just piss it away so easily over and over again. It has driven me up the wall. If he doesn't change, if it's almost like this now, actually, because I before called for Nafany's head. It's Gary and Art. It's both of them. It is both of them. Like, I'm not going to make the same mistake again and put in all the blame on just Art. It's both. Yeah. It's both. It's Gary. Like, Gary lets Art get away with this, and Art keeps doing these things. Like, it's them in tandem that has caused the careers of K-Serato and Yuri and now Cello to be dragged down into the trenches.
I mean, there's no excuse, I feel like, that they should be the 0-3 Brazilian team. Like, surely fucking Pain or Imperial should be 0-3, not this team with Fallen actually playing like better than you could expect from Fallen. I feel like nobody that I know expected Fallen to be good on this roster. He's performing above expectation. I've not been too unhappy with Cello. Yuri's good. K-Serato's amazing. There's no excuse for them to be the 0-3 team. There's really isn't, but you can see it coming because they play nonsensically, and Art just randomly buys guns and he's never killing anyone. I don't understand what he's thinking. It's terrible. It's really bad.
By the way,
so bad.
Here's how I even know that it's just Art. And if you dropped, I think, any of those IGLs, I actually would almost bet that Furia would become like a top 8 team in the world immediately. And here's why. Because think of the player profile of the other players who aren't Art, right? K-Serato is aggressive in the sense he takes duels, but in the game, he obviously isn't super aggressive. Then you have Cello, who already plays like all the fucking bitch roles anyway. Fallen is one of the best clutch players. As a boomer, even he still has it. It's probably one of the best things left in his game is being clutch. And then Yuri already was the fucking stable rifler. So the only guy who's super aggro, that used to be the balance that used to make this team sick when he was the super Art of 2019, 2020 was this aspect. But now, like you say, it just actually puts everyone else in a worse scenario. And the reason that's mad is if people remember back in the day, the original thing Fallen was famous for was even before they had all their lineup with Taco and FNX and Coldzera. Even before that, they used to always win when they had man advantage. They used to have that drilled. And then when he did get the superstars like Fur and Coldzera, that's what SK and Luminosity were the kings of. If they were ever in like a 3v2, they never lost. Because they would always like play smart, play together, make like 2 people in one group, one area, one guy spots. When you catch him, you kill him in the off angle, you use comms to surround them. You never do what this guy does. Because when I came on the stream, Maui, when you were watching that Furia game, I kept pointing out, like, it didn't matter how many times they would actually get some kills early. They would always then feed 1 or 2 kills back. And suddenly it'd be like a 2v2 at the end of the round. Whereas actually, you really could have just cynically played those out like you would in a POG. And you'd just win all the time. And so I also just think it's making the players collectively look worse as a team. But the saddest thing is, to go back before, is obviously the talent on Fury is way better than any of these other teams, Pain and fucking Imperial. But they don't look like it, because the difference is Imperial plays like a team. They actually play cohesively, and they actually aren't fucking idiots with the decisions. And then lastly, I'll just throw this out there. This alone can't damn you, and it's very much just a subjective thing from me. But if you ever see Art in interviews, and we all know what he said when Yanko dared to criticize him, he's also incredibly arrogant. Bruh, I've always said this. Look, I'm so gangster, motherfuckers. I've told Simple to his face, like, you can be arrogant, but only if you are the best, mate. So anytime those teammates complain and say you don't do something, they're right. If you want to be that arrogant, you must literally be the best. You can't be the worst and the reason we're losing and then be arrogant and then also act like, because he does that thing where it's like, he makes out like we're the ones delusionally pretending his team's bad and these results aren't happening. It's like, bro, it is happening. The reason we're this pissed off is we're having to watch these fucking games. And by the way, I don't care if people, he's a nice guy and they're all cool and they really have great fun. Yeah, but here's the problem. I've watched a lot of people's careers in esports, and you don't get as a primary rifler 10 years unless you're extremely lucky. I could count on 2 hands the rifler stars who get 10 years to be great and win the championship. So if you're K-Serato, here's the tragedy you guys haven't even thought of. In 2 years, he might not even be as good. And if he hasn't ever been in position to win a major, he never will win a major. And that is a fucking fucking travesty. Because actually, when we have that discussion, Maui, that I know triggers fans, I'll be straight up. He hasn't been in finals enough to like say it's for sure, but I think Cesarato is better than prime fucking Coldzera. His problem is he doesn't play on the team Coldzera played on, mate. I'd love to drop him into that team with the really good Fallen and fucking Beast Fur and Taco helping. Instead, he's played with art his whole fucking career, and as a result, that's why as a fan, your brain, the second I even said that about him being better than Cole, your brain immediately went, no, it can't be. But then you just have to remember, look at the fucking game. So if I showed you a POV of the two players and took the nameplates off, you would tell me Cesarato all day long. It's insane. I think it's a travesty what they've done to that guy's career. It's the way you're all from the fucking Americas, son. Since they're all just carrying your asses, you have to be like, nah, well said, Thorin, but I haven't got any points. All right, go on, then we'll move to the ugly.
No. Art's blocked me on Twitter a lot.
All right, fair enough.
Art,
he still follows me, though.
Okay.
He used to. He actually did used to follow me. Then suddenly one day I just noticed I was blocked. I was like, okay, well that's that.
I might be blocked because I've been preying on Furia going 0-3 since the opening stage.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can confirm just from my own time reading Twitter. I believe the phrase in Portuguese is bloqueira, but yeah. Sadly, I have just passively learned quite a lot of Portuguese over the years. It's like pressing that translate button just taught my brain the insults without even pressing translate. Right, let's go to the ugly point now, boys. So, Vu, what is your ugly point?
Actually, really interestingly, because I think, Thorin, you might disagree with me on this one, but about 80% of my research is your information on this is about Astralis being a super team and just the super teams in general. I think it's like a poisoned discussion. I'm so tilted that Launders made a video. I said Astralis was a super team, and Launders is like, the only way you can think that is if you are rewriting history and taking the results into account. So he made a whole video calling me out for being wrong about that. That's not at all my thought process. In fact, I argue the opposite. I think people think Astralis wasn't a super team because they look at Astralis and they go, they were super coordinated. They couldn't be a super team. And also, everyone wants this really nice narrative that CS is like chess. So our best team ever actually wasn't that good individually. Yes. They just really played well together. They did play good together, but they also had the best fucking players. Like, they had insanely amazing fucking players. And I just think the whole super team narrative doesn't make any sense, especially because people will say, in one hand, FaZe is a super team. But that also, in my opinion, completely, but they'll say Astralis isn't at the same time. But that also doesn't make any sense because I think there's narrative around the super teams that needs to be important because FaZe has never had the best individual team. They've always been like second or third individually. Is that really a super team when they're in an era of super teams? It's different with Astralis. They were a super team in an era of regional teams. The whole discourse is fucked, in my opinion. But I think, Thorin, I feel like, I'm guessing here, but I thought you don't think Astralis, I might have heard you say this before, Astralis is a super team. Do you?
Oh, you want to get my take directly? Okay. Well, here's what I would say. The problem is, it's this difference between the general and the specific. So if we're going generally, what I would say is this. If you ask me what a super team is, because I do think this is an area, like the best example ever is everyone knows the G2 super team of 2017. And what happened is the players themselves, because they hadn't gotten really good yet, used to go, don't call us a super team, we're not a super team. And then all the fans would go, how could they be a super team if they lost at the semis of a DreamHack? And it's like, super team never meant that. Super team is the idea that when you form the team, that the players are so crazy, the names, that it makes you think like this is the Avengers. Now, it doesn't, I will also say, a straw man is this. Not every player has to be super, though, because otherwise there would almost be no super teams. Also, there's very rare you're ever going to get 5 players that are all like that. But I would say, essentially, a team that has something like 3 stars is an obvious one. That's why people say FaZe, because they had the 3 top 20 players the year before VOO. I would say, in the case of Astralis, this is where it's going to get interesting. I think you certainly could make the case they're a super team, because here's the point that people are going to miss. Every player on that team was a contender for best in their role before that lineup was made. So I think you absolutely could. I know what you mean, Vu. Very quickly, the reason I think people say they aren't is what you're saying. The problem is they're a super team in the sense of the names and the status of the players. If you actually, if I even present it, which I'll do in a second, you'll see how it was always an exciting prospect. It wasn't that we had to wait for them to do an Inferno game to go, wow, they are brilliant. Everyone knew when Magus joined, this could be fucking sick. Remember, it was going to be config if not. These are all super team moves. But I will say, I know what you mean. People think super team because of that phase with Eco and Garden Guardian means you just have 5 superstar players and then they all just do whatever they want and Nico go kill and frag. And you definitely don't ever play any teamwork because that's for pussies and people who have to cheat and use teamwork to win. And a super team is essentially, it's like every HLTV forum dream lineup. If you just put the 5 stars in and Kenny S really does op at this site and Guardian does op at that site, and then in the middle, Flusher does a move and then Snacks comes and wins the clutch at the end, and then fucking Clave goes, well done, boys. They think that's a super team. The reason why, to come back, you're actually probably going to be surprised, I do think Astralis is a super team, is because, first of all, Astralis already won the major without fucking Magisk. And Magisk was the star player of fucking North. Like, I wrote it down while you were talking here. All of these players got to be contender for best in their role in these years. And remember, Astralis with Magisk is in 2018. So you're listening. So Glaive was one of the best in-game leaders in 2013. Now, admittedly, he'd been in the wilderness, but the name is still a big one. His form wasn't when he came in the team. It wasn't even an IGL, but the name is still a big one. That's even why they brought him back. He was a big name they were gambling on, just like Furia gambled on Fallen now. Then you have Dupree. If people don't know, he was one of the best entries in 2014. That's 4 years before this. Then you have Device. He became arguably the best player in the world in 2015. That's when I gave him that status. Then Zipnix in 2015 was already considered the best support, if you don't know. That's when he started to win 1 million clutches, and he would have like 25 bombs as a fucking shitter support in all the bad spots. And then Magisk, like I said, literally had just been, in 2016 in Dignitas, he was like winning tournaments as the fucking MVP level player. And then in 2017 in North, he was still really good. Hence that famous refrain, why did North kick their best player when he was kicked out? That's all before we make this lineup. So to me, absolutely, it's a super team. I know what you mean, though. Like I say, I think people are missing roster construction, and they're going into, like you say, stylistic aspects. Here's an example of why I think they get lost. I do think it was a super team where people sacrificed some of their super elements, and it did become like the squad. That's why people they never did like simple numbers, etc. I think you sacrifice a bit, but I think by all the definitions I do of a super team, they weren't a super team. The expectations were a super team. When they entered the lineup, these names are all amazing. By the way, if it had failed, absolutely, we'd say that was a failed Danish super team, I think.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't see Launder's video, but I watched most of your video on super teams, and even just from my own definition of super teams, because just like the way the term that I hear the most when it was used was just like when Kevin Durant joined the 73-win Warriors, that's it. It became a super team there. They weren't a super team before because it was homegrown talent, but as soon as you add a first ballot Hall of Fame type player onto a roster of other first ballot Hall of Fame type players, well, then that becomes a super team immediately. And the thing is that Magisk, because you brought up that interview with Zonic talking about North and when he said that Magisk was the best player on that team, even though Config technically by HLTV top 20 standards was the highest HLTV 20 rated player, but it was that he didn't actually get the top 20 because he missed a couple months that year, but he was still of that caliber to be a top 20 player. And that's why Zonic said that thing about him. And even like on Dignitas, he was obviously the best player on Dignitas too. He had like, what was it? Didn't he have like a record-setting map at a major or something?
Yeah,
like he had
someone against VP had like 37 kills or something, wasn't it? Something bad like that.
Yeah, exactly. So he was obviously world-class at his position, at his role, and then they were replacing Caribbean for somebody that was also basically like world-class at his role. So, I mean, I don't really think that there was any... I almost feel like if you're... It's almost like the Astralis team then was so reminiscent of the Warriors when they got KD that Magisk joining their team that, you know, you're getting a sensational player for the position. You already had won a major. Think of the Warriors winning a title. And yeah, they didn't win the most recent major, but they had Dupree and Device, who are basically first ballot Hall of Fame players, and Glaive, first ballot Hall of Fame IGL. And now Zipnik's like all-time great support player. And you're adding a player that's basically like the next best Danish rifler in the world. That's what a super team is. That's exactly what a super team is. So for me, I don't even think this is really much of a conversation if you just take like the Warriors example, draw the parallels between them and Astralis. The case is closed for me. I don't know. It's just not even really a discussion. It's like very obvious to me.
An interesting one then, because I think the super team discussion is actually super interesting, because is one player, when you replace one player in a team, do you reevaluate all the players on that team, or are you taking those players when they join? Like, for example, when Cloud9 replaced, they brought in Buster, right? If they brought in someone slightly better, does that make them a super team? Because I wouldn't say bring in Buster. You probably don't reevaluate 3 players on the roster, because Hobbit, Shiro, Axel, they joined when they were kind of unknown. That's probably not a super team. And is FaZe a super team? Because I feel like the context matters. I feel like FaZe has never been this team that's all the best aimers, that they're not. Cloud9's almost always been better. Navi's almost always been better. Vitality and G2 have at least been close. They've been arguable, right? Is that not context that matters? Or are we saying they're a super team just because they have 3 stars?
It doesn't matter how good the player was when they joined the team, because when Durant joined the Warriors, Draymond, Clay, and Steph Curry were rookies when they joined the Warriors. They weren't all-star Hall of Fame players.
The argument against is going to be that KD was such a huge pickup that it was like if you added Simple to the team.
If you added instead of Buster, you got Electronic, then that's a super team to me. That would have been a super team. You had Axile, you had Shiro, now you have Electronic. That's 3 people that are like Hall of Fame caliber people. If over half of the team is a Hall of Fame caliber team, like this is why probably like I don't know this like it doesn't really work for me as much in sports where there's like above nine or more people on the floor, because you're rarely going to have 5 Hall of Famers out of 9 or something. But if it's 3 out of 5, it's very doable to have 3 world-class people at their role on a team. And in fact, like that Astralis team, it's not even entirely results oriented, because they had already won a major. Like it's not the results after where they won 3 majors. They were a super team when they formed that. And like for other examples of super teams that have kind of like been the definition has been really muddied, I think people are trying to give Liquid a pass like they weren't supposed to be a super team. That was obviously supposed to be a super team. What are we talking about? Like we got Twist, top 20 player in the world. We got Naf. Pretty much the only reason he wouldn't be a top 20 player is because Liquid didn't have the results in the previous year. We had Cadian, who for my money was not a top 20 player last year, but HLTV gave him the award, and this is kind of like the closest to objective.
And he was potentially the best IGL anyway. You could say that Angal too.
Well, yeah. So top 3 in his role, which is IGL, but I wouldn't consider him a top 5 upper. But in terms of like IGL role, it's kind of weird because you have to like try to take those roles separately with Cadian, even though it's supposed to be such a high impact position with the op. But if we take Twist, Naf, Cadian, that's already 3 people who are basically Hall of Fame caliber players. That should be enough. And then you have Skulls is like kind of getting off the hook here, like because he's unproven talent. Like he wouldn't necessarily be part of that for me. But then Yakinder, like world class in his role too. When he's not in-game leading, when he's just an entry fragger, he's supposed to be an in-game lead, or he's supposed to be an entry frag superstar, and that's what he was before he was that's before he was a leader on Liquid. So that was supposed to be a super team for me too. So the most recent Astralis was supposed to be a super team with Blame F and Stabby. And also Liquid was supposed to be a super team, putting together Twist, Katie, and Naf.
Yes. And also, similarly, if they had Nico and Falcons, that would have been a super team as well, for similar reasons. Yeah. By the way, the 2 other factors. One, just like I said, it's what you are when you join the team. I would also say, similarly, I also do agree with that premise, which is you don't wait till a team becomes the best, like SK Gaming with Fallen, and then go, it's a super team, because it wasn't. It became, they did that collectively as a team. It's a super team based on the individual things. I'll tell you another principle I would say, is this is why I would say FaZe is a super team, and why even this shit Astralis with Blame F was a super team, because it's the premise that these other people were stars elsewhere, and in theory could go elsewhere and be stars. Like I could take Rops, Twists, Brokey, and fucking all of these guys and put them on another team, and they could be the star player of like the 9th best team in Europe. Of course they could. Similarly, like if you take all the joke of the Astralis ones, they did take what they thought were the 2 stars of Astralis and the 2 stars of Heroic and put them on one team. In fact, I'd even say that's the reason why that's got to be part of the criteria for super teams, is because that's why most super teams don't work. Like the biggest joke about the Warriors one is, motherfucker, there's a world where that just didn't work, and then everyone laughs at them for 20 years for doing that move and go, oh, you morons thought it would work, and there's only one ball, idiot, which is what we've all said about every other Kevin Durant super team, isn't it? It's like, there's one ball and you all want it. So the real thing is, the joke is this, like the G2 2017, where they never came close to winning the major, and then obviously this Astralis that just failed this RMR. When a super team fails, we can all laugh and see that they tried to make a super team. But I feel like people just take the ones that work, and then they either just go, well, they have some team components. It's like, yeah, they're not just literally 5 separate people. Like, they are a team. And then the other angle, obviously, is, obviously then, when they then win, you go, well, it's just obvious you'd win. You had all the best players. Because, by the way, to this day, that will always be my most hated critique of coaches and IGLs. It's like, but you had all the best players. It's like, do you know how many people didn't win with the best players? Most people in history, you fucking idiots. Meanwhile, actually, some great IGLs win even without the great players. So I do think, like, superstar status matters as well. That's a big thing for me. That's why I even
give you
say
an
I will
argument against on the FaZe one.
acknowledge that the Astralis one was, even though it failed. You know, go on then, hit me with the rebuttal.
Yeah. So Twist joins. When I look at the FaZe team, Brokey joins. He's not before Rops. I don't. With the Rops pickup, maybe we'll say. Brokey joins. He's not really that amazing. He's not really well known.
True.
Twist joins purely because he's moving to Europe. I don't think he's. I probably got a deal from Liquid, I'm guessing.
But it's what I've always thought it helped that his girlfriend lived in Germany, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Boo. You know what I mean? It's a bit like Device going to Stockholm. I don't know if it was totally fair IP. You know what I mean?
I thought it came out beforehand that he wanted to move to Europe, and so Liquid basically made it happen. That was my understanding. Kerrigan, this is after the Maus roster where he's like, I thought he was the GOAT IGL, but he wasn't really getting that many props.
Sure.
And FaZe specifically were not spending money. That's like the narrative, at least in the scene, is that FaZe was not spending money. They got Kerrigan for free. They got Twist probably on a discount because he was already moving to Europe. Brokey, not really all that well known. And then they had just like mega washed Rain and mega washed Olaf at the time. And then you take that roster.
I know what you mean. Yeah, go on.
They're not that good. They're not that good at the time they brought in Rops. I remember saying at the time, Rops isn't going to fix this unless they also fix their other problems. That's my argument against FaZe being a super team.
All right, here's the problem with that. I know what you mean. Like if you want to do like individual form right before they join, you're right, because like Twist wasn't even that good after Liquid, was he? He had to come to the scuffed phase and rebuild himself. Obviously, Brokey was never a superstar until this FaZe clan. Rain was super old. I would just say that's more the name value, though. The name value is insane. Like just these names alone, Rain, Twists, Rops, and Kerrigan, forgetting Brokey, those four alone is a super team. You know what I mean? Just those names alone. So I would say, I'll give you this one. I will say that one's a bit more tenuous because you are right. We are also sort of projecting backwards a little bit on FaZe and acting like they're all as good as they were in 2022 and 2021, which some of them definitely weren't. I'm with you on that. Like Brokey wasn't, for example. Okay. Right.
Okay.
Is that it? Is there more on the super? By the way, what was the gist of Launders' main argument? Aside from, like, I don't know, shit, man. Oh, fuck, whoa. Hey, I'm not reading that, bro. Anyway, everyone in the chat, fucking give me money or something. What was his good point?
It's hard to say. I was so triggered by being told my own opinion incorrectly.
Oh,
the entire video.
That's my whole life, mate. But yeah, no.
Steam was coming out of my ears the whole fucking time. He argued that FaZe was super team because they because they were a super team from the beginning, and that's his justification for FaZe 2022's being a super team is that the 2017 FaZe they bought Coldzera and Coldzera failed, and then they bring in Rops and Train. I see a gap there, but that was his argument for them, and I think he had a pretty.
What was his reason that Astralis isn't then? What was his reason for that? Just the thing about they play tactically and they're not like selfish or something. What was it? Like
I would say that's the reason he thinks that, but his reason is that they were not superstars before joining the team. That
that actually blows my mind because that's where Launders needs to remember that in 2015 he was the guy who came on to do the worst match at LANs I was attending as an analyst and was definitely at the bottom of ye old pecking order and going fucking home early. And the reason why I bring that up is because Launders is fucking speaking out of pocket there. Because mate, if you go back to 2014, the reason everyone flamed the fuck out of Fetish is because all the players were studs. They were all young studs. He had Cage and B in his prime. He had young Device and Dupree, and Zipnix already was crafting that like superstar from a like supportive, no resources role. Then in 2015, when Kerrigan took over, the reason they instantly won loads of lands is because Kerrigan himself even could up back then. Like they already, the whole time they were TSM and Astralis. If people don't remember, we all used to say it wasn't because Device choked. We used to say the reason it's criminal this team hasn't won the major is they're probably the most skilled team man for man in Counter-Strike. We all used to say back then it was logical that they could beat Fnatic. They're the only people that could outgun them every time. So I actually think that's a crazy take from fucking... I'm actually really shocked at that one from Launders because what's bizarre about that is like he's making it sound like Device before like the Astralis that wins the major is just like some sort of good player. Like, bruh, we were saying in 2015, why hasn't this guy won the major yet? We were telling Dupree the whole time, years and years and years, you're one of the best entries. Where's your title? What's going on here? That's why everyone hated on Kerrigan. People didn't hate on him because it's like, he's just like fucking washed it. No, people thought, why haven't you won the major yet with this team? It was like what's happening to Huxley now, but even more so. Every major, it was like, you haven't won again. You have this amazing roster. You haven't won again. You won all the lands in between. You haven't won again. So I'm amazed that he would have that take. It's such a weird take. Like all those players, like I told you, like they don't all have to be together. Like obviously Dupree, Zipnix and Dupree were all together. But like I said about the Magisk angle, the Glaive angle, fucking other players, like these players were coming in and they were even going to add config, like I said. They were obviously a superstar team to me.
Fuck, I was ready for the argument because I have so many Thorin, I have so many quotes from you from 2014 videos, 2015 videos.
Say what I just said now, yeah? No, I guarantee it was say what I just said now, right? That they were all like super players. Yeah, of course.
My argument is
I have a good believe it or not, I can remember my own opinions unlike other people apparently. Go on, hit me with it. Give me some quotes. Give me some 2014 Thorin quotes.
Okay. Dignitas is a CSGO team that contains the best players in all of Denmark. That's you in November of 2014. Get right or Dupree and Device with a 1-2 punch. The get right in forest of the Danish scene.
There you go.
I like that one. I like that one. Pimp in an AMA actually said Glaive is by far the biggest wasted talent of all time in November of 2015.
Yep, makes sense.
Fuck, I've got dude, I've got like 20 of these. I just have
no. By the way, this is why I believe you're right. Because like I say, I'm not just making up now. This is always my take. I always thought it was the other way around. That actually, Astralis. It's funny they became eventually.
Magic, though, actually, I thought that. Sure. That's why I thought you would argue against because you in your video about Magic, you were like, I don't really know if this is like that great of a move. So my argument then was like, fuck it. It's Caribbean that made them a super team. They were the second best team in the world. Then they added Caribbean and everyone agreed. You even made a video talking about the Danish super team and you had Astralis, except you removed Kerrigan and get MSL. And then you removed Cajun B and get Caribbean. And you're like, that's the Danish super team. And I'm like, fuck yeah, that's a Danish super team.
There you go. No, if people don't know, by the way, the reason I was actually a bit nervous on the Magisk one is I always did think actually Config was the obvious choice because Kirby himself was like an entry player, wasn't he? So I always thought, but if you get Magisk, won't it be like sort of a bit too sort of like slow and conservative? And the joke is, well, it was, but it just was the best team ever. So it turned out that worked like a motherfucker, didn't it? So, and also, to be fair, I also do think in that team, Magisk himself was a little bit more of an entry player at times or would be a bit more aggressive than when he was the lurker in fucking Dignitas. So, no, that fair play that you did the research there. I'm actually shocked that Launders himself didn't know. Spoiler, obviously he wasn't fucking listening when he was watching all those videos of his hero back in 2014, waiting to work a Sevo LAN with him and watch him eat cold fries and then verbally abuse a fucking runner for not bringing the fries when they were warm. Here's the thing, I've never even pretended to not be a diva. I just say, it's like that thing I said about Simple earlier. Yeah, I'm the fucking best. What do you want? I think I've earned it. I put all the fucking graft in there. I just did like 3,000 videos. I think I can be a diva. So bring me those fucking fries on time and don't ever tell me what I think about Dignitas 2014 Launders. I'll tell you what isn't a super team. Fucking Launders and Scrawny Casting. Those are just two fucking throwaway 2016 casters who just used to charge less day rates, so they got into some gigs during the online event. Oh, did I say that out loud? Oh, shit, my bad. But it's all right, you're pretty good now, as long as you're not reading out who won the tournament you just watched. I'm always going to be me, Vu. You have to understand that, mate.
So
I'm always going to... I don't give a fuck, bruh. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck, mate. But listen, they did fuck that up. Here's the thing, they are pretty good now, though. I'll give them fair play.
They're very good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good.
I like their casting.
I mean, I will say, it is a bit like when G2 was on top. You got to look at who they compete. They are just competing against Harry and Hugo. So again, fucking hell, you know. All right, they still do finals now. My bad. It's not 2019. Okay.
And Henry G2 now.
Mate, Anderson Henry G is that phase 2021 team he's talking about. It's like, mate, their best days are years ago. And, you know, are they really even at the top anymore? Isn't that sort of Olaf Meister and Rain in 2021 phase? It's like, yeah, it's cool you're hearing that, but I don't know. If we want to win the tournament, we should probably get someone good in who's good now. I don't know. By the way, everyone involved, all great friends of mine. Love them all.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. We like these people a lot. We like all these people.
You have to understand, guys, I'm sort of like the jester. I'm the one that's allowed to just come at the king and say all that. Like, you have to understand, Anders would even just go, listen, man, and just go like, and then he'd go into some fucking speech about how Semler held him back or something. He wouldn't really, actually. He's a good guy. Right, let's move on. Yeah. Is that the end of the super team thing, Vo? Was there any last thing?
Oh, I've got a million other things, but yeah, I think that's.
Is there any other actual more actual point though, like beyond just like the minor stuff?
No, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff with super teams that other people will probably bring up eventually. That just what is the name value important, right?
Sure.
But you know, everyone kind of goes differently.
I will say it is one of those things that, to be fair, the reason I've thought about it is because I've just done a lot of this content on my channel over the years. I do think we have a lot of terminology that we never essentially define, and people do just have this like vague thing we're all throwing out there. It's why, if you notice, I've been so ridiculously autistic about the term superstar. I never ever give that term to someone who's just a flash in the pan. You have to actually really be, in my opinion, like pretty much top 5 in the world player, like consistently for me before I give you that status. Because I do think if you throw terms like super team, team, a superstar. If you put these terms around too much, you just get nothing. It becomes a bland mess of like, you have like 50 you know what I mean? Like, you can't tell me Centaurus is a superstar. He might be a superstar of his team, but he's not a superstar. So I do think it's worth having the discussion and figuring out where people are coming from with that one. Because to be fair, no one ever has defined that term. We all just say it. It's kind of, in fact, it's actually more of a marketing term, super team, really, isn't it? It's not really anything any analysts sat down and figured out what we mean by it. We just kind of did our own thing. Right.
Yeah, I feel like FaZe is the name value version of super team. That's the way I thought of it. Yeah.
Right, come on then, Maui. Maui's got his own big topical discussion for this one. So what is yours, Maui, for the ugly? I think we're going to disagree on this. I'm interested.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we will. I mean, I feel like there's a couple ways to. I'll just bring it up first, and then we can get into some of the details of it. So, Falcons released, I think it was yesterday or earlier this morning, this vlog of them trying to get through the RMR, make it to the major. And as we know, they did not qualify for the major, having lost consecutively to FaZe, Eternal Fire, and then actually bottoming out to Amcol, which was obviously not a very good team based off of the results at the actual major. And so in the vlog itself, it shows the way that everybody treated BOROS, how they had a pretty lengthy discussion after some of their losses about BOROS and the fact that he changed his mouse, he changed his settings, he was going through a bunch of stuff in terms of like Modern earlier in the video. I actually kind of like gave it a little bit of a rewatch, and it seems like actually Modern was kind of hinting at like, I'm not sure if he explicitly named BOROS, but he was kind of talking about people being late to practice or something, which was heavily implied that it was BOROS. And so they're definitely throwing a lot of blame on him at this event for his performance, because at Katowice, if we want to just go straight by the numbers, at Katowice he was, in my eyes, probably like their best overall performer. Like the amount of multi-frags BOROS got for them was pretty absurd at Katowice. I think when you use the actual eye test, you would have said like, ooh, like what is BOROS doing in these mid-late round situations? And this is a complaint we've been having about BOROS for a pretty long time at this point. In fact, it's kind of what SDY and Monty talked about, where they after BOROS, you know, they were like, oh, we can actually play some better TCS right now. And like in the short term, actually, you know, it did look like, oh, would see a little bit more structure. But hey, without BOROS, and Monty didn't even also qualify for the major. So they weren't, in some ways, I do pin that on the fact that like SDY was sick and they had to play with a stand-in, so that definitely hurt their chances a little bit. But I also think like if you just had BOROS, you probably would have been in a better position, because he is a fragger. Like this is kind of like we're kind of seeing a difference right now, I think, in the community, and like there was a piling on for BOROS and like trying to make it work. And how for sometimes when you have like say a toxic player like Simple, how you will put up with Simple for certain types of numbers, but it's like Simple's numbers were so good that you have to put up with what Simple's doing. Even no matter how toxic Simple is to his teammates, you have to put up with it. But then for BOROS, it's like, yeah, he doesn't seem to have his life in order. Like he'll show up late for practice and stuff, and he'll change his settings. But if he still outputs, we're starting to be like, okay, well, we're not going to put up with that, because that just draws the line, because he's not at this certain level. And I just feel like my ugly point about this is sort of, I never really thought I would feel sorry for BOROS, but I definitely did feel a bit sorry for BOROS and how he was treated by Falcons in their roundtable discussions, where they clearly were dogpiling on him for his performance at the RMR itself. Like they were clear, like every single person went through this, and I kind of thought at some point, like Mindbody Esports guy, or wait, is it Mindbody Esports? No, it's like Lars Robel. Or is
no, you're right. It's Lars Robel. You're right. Yes, it is.
It's Lars Robel that in their huddles, kind of like, no one really stepped in. Everybody got to take their turn. Magisk, Modern, Snappy, and Zonic. I don't think Sunpai said anything about just the fact that this is tilting everyone off the face of the earth, that BOROS, your play is inconsistent because you're looking at, they literally said, well, you change your mouse from Katowice, you're changing your NVIDIA settings in the middle of the game, and Modern even brought up the fact you're just looking at donk settings. So I think he just changed his settings to donks in the middle, or like between tournaments or something like that. And I just felt like that, to me, was like, Falcons are clearly frustrated. There's a lot of pressure on them, but to pin it all on one person, and then they kind of like, but it's a team loss, but it's a team loss. And when BOROS even admitted to it, they were like, no, it's a team loss. But it's like, well, then why did like no one else even seem to take ownership for this moment and that's loss, other than just pinning all the blame on BOROS? So that's where I felt like it was like, you guys wanted to have your cake and eat it too, that you can still feel like the good guys at the end of the day and say like, no, it's a team loss. It's a team loss. Don't blame yourself, BOROS. But all they did was blame BOROS for 10 minutes straight.
Come on, Vu.
I don't know if I have much to add to that. I mean, I feel like that's the typical, like, everyone has problems with BOROS showing up late. And so it's like, oh yeah, when the team loses, it's actually, let me just, well, I like Snappy. He's a nice guy. I think we could have a good IGL. Fuck this BOROS guy, though. Absolutely. He showed up to practice late. Fuck this guy. Get him out. I don't know why they would air that, though. I feel like that's something you probably try to keep behind the scenes. I guess maybe they thought it was fine if, like, because I didn't see the video. Maybe there's other context, but that is probably something I wouldn't want out there. It just feels like not. And then they do. I hate when people do that. They hide behind the, like, oh, what is the team lost? Like, it's a team loss. It's like, it's the same thing when they someone on Twitter, they posted the list of people that were on the friends list of the guy that was apparently like trying to get people to fix matches, and they posted the friends list, and it's like, oh, but he was a coach, like these people are going to be our friends. Like, well, I never said that there were actually anything wrong with this. And it's like, yeah, but you've clearly fucking implied it. Like, that's the point you're making on this thread, is that these people are shady because they're on his friends list. Like, that one triggers me a little bit.
I'll probably do a whole video on this because I actually think both on this specific case and the abstract about how you coach people in different coaching cultures, etc. I feel like I could do like a 40-minute video, probably pretty interesting, but I'll give you sort of the highlights. So first of all, the problem here is this. Everyone watching this video is watching someone not in the game. So you're not seeing the mistakes he made in the game, potentially caused or exacerbated by the issue they're raising. So as a result, you're just seeing a group of people have a conversation, and then what you're seeing is your human impulse to protect people that you feel like are being bullied and picked on is going, oh, come on, man, leave him alone. Like, you're all just being mean to him, and in a turn as well. And the problem with that is this is a top professional team that has bazillion dollars to spend and wants a lot of success. And by the way, I don't know where Madden's head's at, but I'll tell you what, Snappy, Sonic, and Magisk are only there to win things like the Copenhagen Major. That is the only reason they joined that team, was to actually have the chance to get that level of success. And in this scenario, it's not that this is what I hate about this. People are acting like BOROS just didn't play very well or did bad decisions, and they're just hating on him. No. Think about it. We've got 3 strikes there. So he's late to practice. You're already the guy who doesn't understand what you're doing and is actually failing, and the least experienced, and you've never won shit, and you're late. So 1, that already is unacceptable to me. Absolutely, you should be punished and publicly called out for that if you keep doing it. 2, you're not only late, you then changed your mouse when your one upside, as they said, but more politely, is your fucking aim. And your aim was already crisp. And that's the best thing about you, was your aim. So you took that away from us at the qualifier for the Major, where, by the way, just qualifying would have repaid all the money that our org just paid for all these players and millions of dollars. So you literally fucked a lot of things up there. It's why Richard goes way harder than I do on config when he busted his leg having that fight, because he says basically that fight cost your teammates in Astralis a chance to go to a major and millions of dollars as an org. Like, in his world, that alone gets you cut. I get what he means. And then the third strike is, notice he didn't just say you changed your mouse and then you were late. They imply he also was like fucking around in the NVIDIA graphics setting like right before a game goes live. So he's fucking with every possible variable that you're supposed to keep the same as a pro in a team. And you're the fucking rookie. You're the little newbie that's never done anything. Everyone there has been either an elite team or they are champions. They are world champions, bro. They are people of the highest expectations. And then lastly, you're not even supposed to be there. They never wanted you. That's not your fault, but it's a chance for you. You need to change their mind. You need to be better than they expect and to fit what they're doing, because they never wanted you. And so the second you don't work, they were already going to get someone else. So there's also a different dynamic. They're not going to turn on some pious because they've only just bought him. He's obviously going to be there. If he has issues with the AWP early on, you're going to make it work. If you have issues with like how Sonic and Snappy communicate, well, you're going to make it work. You're committed to that thing. No one was ever committed to this. And so actually, it's the other way around. BOROS was given a chance to play in this giant potential super team that he has no business being in, and then he is fucking up things. This is what people don't get. Each one of those is not a minor thing. Other pros don't fuck those up. He is fucking up the basics. These are the 101 things of being a pro. And then also, I'll just throw this out there. When it comes to Sonic, right, are you actually all arguing that you knew how Sonic coached in Astralis and Vitality and that this is some anomaly to that? I know Zonic to be quite a fucking spicy character. You've heard that story about how he just straight up told Config, like, you're not joining the team then because I don't like what you said. He doesn't fuck around because he knows, by the way, his whole career and reputation rides on who he puts in the server and what they do. He knows that you better be actually up to his standard. And this is my problem with this topic, is you have no A/B testing to do, guys. You don't know what FaZe Clan says, except they had the odd vlog. You don't know what fucking Team Spirit says when they go into the match. You only know certain times when you get to see vlogs like this. And obviously, even if you see the vlog, they might not always capture the team talk outside. I think, by the way, to answer View's question, the real mistake was putting the video out. Because since people don't know those things, they're going to overreact to it. And I also think, lastly, that the reason they put it out and still kept all that in, even though I agree it's a bad look, is because BOROS is already out. They released this video 1 day ago, guys. BOROS is already out. So you might think naively as the guy doing media, well, he's the one it's safe to criticize, isn't he? Because he's not in the team anymore. So actually, I can leave this spicy stuff, which here's the problem. You all wanted to see that video. I'll bet you were all raptured fucking watching it. But then you didn't like the outcome of it. So my problem, lastly, goes like this, which is, it is an edited video. They cut between each of the people. So actually, we have no idea what they said. I can tell you when you do like vlogs, there's loads of shit goes on the cutting room floor. Like in that scenario, first of all, you're not keeping anything tactical in. So if actually they didn't go one by one, if it went like, Zonic said, like, this is not acceptable, mate, and I won't put up with this. Maybe after that, the cut is because the next guy goes, yeah, and actually the way we played like T-side on train, like we need to get our entries, but they cut that out. That gets cut out because that wouldn't be in the vlog. So you're only seeing the drama part, and then obviously going one by one. Then here's the weirdest part: when people go, it's like you're bullying. By the way, I will guarantee knowing Zon like this. If BOROS had his own legit complaint about them, I guarantee that's exactly what that setting would have allowed him to make his complaint. Because there's another thing. This is where too many Americans are getting involved in this. Sorry to people in the call, which is Americans can't handle being spoken to like that. Even though, spoiler, every great sports culture that isn't yours, the one that wins by having money and steroids, the other sports cultures are all like this. They are all the opposite. They are all, if you can't stand the heat, get the fuck out the kitchen because I will get someone in who can stand it. And that basically becomes the filter that gets all the weak people out and all the people who won't practice properly and all the people who aren't diligent. And you just get them out as soon as possible. You don't have fucking meetings and this guy's in timeout, and well, I understand you were upset and frustrated with what happened, but if you could express your feelings towards him in a way that's positive though, constructive. No, they don't have time for that. This is literally, they're still in the middle of the RMR. There's another thing people didn't notice. People think this video is after the RMR. They all told BOROS, shove it up your ass, and then kicked him out the team. They say in the video they're 1-1. The RMR is still going on and they are yet to play the best of threes. So in this setting, they are actually trying to fix things today to win the best of threes. And notice what they all say. This is one area I think you guys were way too fucking harsh on them. Almost every one of them weaves compliments in to a guy whose only compliment is you can shoot people in the head. They find as many ways as they can to explain to him, you're really sick aiming, mate. Hey, your aim is your greatest strength. Like, we need your strength. In Katowice, by the way, Snappy is telling this motherfucker, a guy who might never ever win a trophy in CS, you have the best aim I've ever seen, and I played with fucking like config for fuck's sake. I've just played with nerds, stud players. By the way, I don't know about you guys. I don't consider it a diss to BOROS to tell him he has better aim than config and nerds. I think that's a fucking insane compliment to receive from a mega veteran IGL like Snappy. So I'm actually a bit shocked by this one. I totally understand. I would feel bad if I was BOROS. It felt awkward to watch it. Yes, it felt like, they're all going in on him a bit harsh. But first of all, they have to be harsh because none of them did those things. Yeah, they were bad in the game. They didn't do unprofessional things that can be avoided, though. Like, notice they didn't go in on things about the game like that. They didn't tell him, like, you're not fucking, you idiot, you don't even know decisions, you fool, I don't want someone like this. They didn't do any of that. They literally, on things that, like I say, other pros don't do, they basically called this guy and said, right, while we're in the tournament now, I'm pulling your car. Mate, the one that I think people miss, and this is where I get the feeling I have a different vibe on pros, and I've just known a lot more team environments, it's the Magisk one. Magisk, he literally almost breaks down crying. Did no one else catch that? He has a moment where his voice sort of cracks a bit and he almost cries trying to say that essentially he's here for majors like this. Like there's a moment mate, that was very earnest. And if people just took that as bullying, I think you absolutely could never be in a competitive environment. In a competitive environment, there is not time to sit down and have high tea and politely address each other with social mores in very, very carefully flowery language, say that you were a little bit disappointed that he wasn't quite punctual. You have to just tell him, bro, it said 10 o'clock and you were here 10:05, dickhead. If you aren't here tomorrow at 10 o'clock, you won't be here ever again at 10 o'clock. That's what you do in that scenario when you want to win the major. This is not just like, oh, but everyone gets to play and have a fun time. I know this is one where I'm taking quite a harsh take the other way. I don't excuse any of it, but here's the other problem I'll say finally. Zonic has won the most majors ever in Counter-Strike. You all tell me he is the greatest coach of all time, but now after seeing one video, you all completely disagree with how he coaches and sets up the discussions in his teams. Really, bruh? Because here's the real problem that I think you all have. You don't get that, you know, when you all got shocked at the drama after Astralis split up, you know, where it was like Zonic's actually coming out and saying he fucking called in the practices. And then Glave's a bit like pissed off at some of the others and the Astralis org. And then Device is making comments implying like he'd rather be away from it. That's because everyone has an ego. Everyone has these battles. The point is, when you win in a Brazilian games, you're not going to have those problems. And then secondly, you don't know these guys. They've had harsh conversations in Astralis, I can tell you. Not quite like this, because no one's fucking... It's not like Zipnix turns up like, hello, oh, I've got my underwear on my head, and I didn't bring a mouse today. Oh, shit, but don't be mean to me. I'm still a human, aren't I? Like, so I think people don't realise, like, there's way... Put it this way, I'll guarantee, like, Na'Vi teams were fucking 10 times worse than this when Simple was in there. Were you fucking kidding me? I bet it was outrageous between Zeus and fucking Simple. I can't even imagine what... Because I've heard them comment Russian just in the game and say, basically, that the guy's a piece of shit, and, like, while the other one's still alive. So, I don't know. Have you got any final thoughts on this one, boys?
I want to give some credit to Zonic. I mean, from my understanding, a lot of the Astralis players called him basically a father figure.
Yep.
One of the things he did when he came in, I believe this was in his reflections, is he basically sat Dupree and Kerrigan down, and he was like, "You guys fucking suck. Fix that." And Dupree came to him and he was like, "Tell me how to fix that.
Yes.
I'll do anything you want." And Dupree stayed on the team, and Kerrigan basically was like,
he implies he couldn't vibe with it. Yeah, he didn't vibe with it.
And then he's gone. I imagine Zonic gave lots of opportunities to BOROS, and I feel like if BOROS was, based on the timeline of those changes, I feel like if BOROS was receptive and not combative, probably it would be a little bit longer before he got removed. I would imagine that there's a lot going on with that.
Any final thought, Maui? We can disagree. It's all good.
No, I feel like, well, okay, like, I know so much more that BOROS did behind the scenes that I can't even defend it. Like, that's the thing. Like,
that's the other problem, mate. I don't know about you, but I was getting that vibe too. I was getting the vibe, like, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, you know, like, this isn't the first time even, you know.
There's so much more disparaging information known about BOROS behind the scenes that if I say it, it's almost like I would get arrested or I would get sued. So I'm not going to do that. If he lawyered up, I can't say anymore. So, like, you know, I know that he's doing some bad stuff behind the scenes. I feel like the way that, I guess the thing is that perhaps because it is so obviously edited like that, and I feel like the thing is that when watching Falcons, there are a lot of mistakes that were made by BOROS, even when they were playing games in Katowice, but it felt like in Katowice, they were improving so regularly, game to game as a unit, that it wasn't actually... Because I guess what I might be doing lightly here is conflating the fact that BOROS actually carried their asses through parts of Katowice. They wouldn't have made playoffs if BOROS didn't play that well. So it feels like in the totality of BOROS's work with the team that he was a huge reason that they did as well as quickly as they did at Katowice. And at the RMR, he wasn't that good. I think that was pretty obvious, actually. But it's just, so I feel like the dogpiling nature of everybody expressing how they did, like what they did, how they did, just felt like this guy was... I see what you mean. I see what you mean in that, like, yeah, certain types of coaching and everything like that needs to be hard. But when it's like, you know, some players on the team also aren't even playing that well, or think calling isn't going that well, that it's just like a pure dogpile of it. I guess the editing makes it seem a little bit more vicious when it's like, there could have been conversations like, Modern, you need to improve at these certain aspects of your game too. So I suppose that editing makes it feel a little bit more like they're just scapegoating him, when obviously he was bad. Obviously he was a hindrance to them at that event. I'm not defending him in that capacity, but it's just, I suppose that the editing made it feel a lot more about just, let's ignore our own faults. Because also, like, I've said this in a previous Snake and Banter thing, like, it's almost like some of the like Magisk like vocally said he was like, I can't play with this guy at Katowice as he's winning them games. Like, that's insane to me. Like, that's crazy to me. And I feel like that was like, if you're surrounded by that environment, I guess that's like the make it or break it, what separates the men from the boys, or whatever like that. But if you're also like doing quite well at an event and you're being told that, or people are saying that around you, I don't even know. Like, that's just, I guess that is the soft American side of it, of me, that it's just like, that's like, bro, he's just winning you games, and you're still saying, like, you're still shit talking him, like if you played better in your positions too. I just think like more, I guess my mentality in these kind of things is always like, when I played or when I do anything, I think more of a, like, what can I do? And I guess like if I were a certain level of competitor, maybe I would start like throwing the blame around as actively as they did in the way that they did. But I guess like, maybe that's just what it is, and that's what they're allowed to do over there. So
Put it this way,
okay. That's okay.
In League of Legends, this has happened 10 times. What happens is the LPL, the Chinese league, has these documentaries like this, and they'll release them. And by the way, their coaches full on say stuff like, "You're all shit, and you're an idiot. What were you doing?" They just talk like that, right? Because again, if you can't handle it, they just replace it with another guy who's really talented, and they get someone who can. But here's the difference: every Western player in America goes, "How rude and abusive," and I just say to them, your teams are shit and theirs are winning the world championship. You might not like how they're doing it, but you cannot argue with their methods. And what you're saying, I think, is very unfair, which is they're implying, well, I could also win the world championship, but also have everyone feel good while doing it. It's like, we have no example of that. All we have at the moment is the very soft one is the weakest region, and the harshest one is very, very successful. So, like I said before, I notice no one's then doing the corollary, which should be the follow-on. If you think this is unacceptable, you must think the following opinions. Zonic doesn't understand how to coach and set up groups of people to have communication. Magiska's an arsehole, and Snappy isn't the nice guy you thought he was. Madden doesn't even understand what BOROS was doing. No, I don't think any of those things, because like I say, I think everyone's acting like they're bullying him for his play. He's being bullied for things he never, ever should have done that are all each unacceptable. And by the way, if I even knew when we lost a map, you didn't even have your mouse, I would tilt off the face of the earth. I don't know about you. That would be like, because it's what I can handle us losing in the game. I can handle you making a mistake, missing a shot. When you just essentially like if I said to you, what are the best ways I could sabotage this team in Falcons? Here's what you would do as a villain. You'd delay BOROS so he's late to arrive on time, so everyone's pissed off. You'd give him a different mouse that he doesn't even use, so he wouldn't be as... You'd fuck up his graphics set. He did it all to him. He did it himself willingly to them. The call is coming from inside the building. He is the murderer. He is the one with the scream mask on. He's stabbing you, and they're just going, please stop murdering us. And you're going, well, fucking hell, why doesn't he get to say that to you? You aren't murdering him. What are we even talking about here? And then finally, this is one point I want to make, because I feel like this was really lost. I guarantee this was not a Zonic talk where other people just started speaking out of school. This looks like it is intentionally a circle where we go one by one and address whatever things we're all bottling up. And here's why, by the way, the American method also doesn't work. Because you have the emotion regardless, but what you do in America is you sublimate it and push it down as far as you can, and one day that will come out in your shadow self 1,000 times more powerfully. That's what will happen. Is the difference in America is they'll smile to your face and have great convos where their mediator talks and we never disagree, and then 3 months later you get an email from your manager that you're cut from the team, and no one ever told you why, no one ever gave you a chance to improve, no one ever mid-tournament took you aside and said, this is unacceptable, if you do that again, you're gone. And then afterwards, you then go, it's unfair, it's bullshit, why was I fighting? I wasn't even doing anything wrong, it wasn't even me, and you're never even aware of what was going on, because no one actually addresses the real issues that are fucking, because like I say, I'm almost certain the purpose of that group was to let each person get their say, and at the end, I'll guarantee it's just like, right, Falcons on 5, and then you go back in and play the game. That's the vibe I took. You might just, maybe you have a different take. That was what I thought I saw.
I only disagree with a small part. It's so nitpicky, but it's obviously like, I mean, spending more time in New York, people are very direct. So that's why I'm not like really, I'm not upset about people being direct or anything like that. Like that's not really the point here. I mean, but the thing I wanted to say is that I think that it is hilarious that two teams that failed to make the major made two completely contrasting videos of how they work behind the scenes in Liquid with their retreat before it to just get to know each other better in preparation for it, and then Falcons being direct as it is, and I mean, they both failed. So it's like, if we're going on a results oriented thinking of who's the winner here, it's like, we'll see what the vlogs look like of Spirit or FaZe at the end of this event.
Sure.
And Thorin, you're wrong, by the way. When NA players have a problem with someone else, they're in Steam messages with their friends immediately, okay? They're not bottling anything up. They're shit-talking their team to the guy on the other team and explaining how terrible.
By the way, I think that's way worse, though.
Their teammates.
I think that's way worse. Yeah.
By
the way, I've always given this example in the past. By the way, every coach I know agrees with me. We'd all rather have even the worst simple where he just tells you to your face, you are a fucking bitch, get out of the server, I don't want to play with you. That is easier to deal with than a Liege, like you say, yeah, I'm okay. opens up a fucking Steam chat. You see him typing really quickly, and then when you look over, he minimizes it. That's the worst, because like I said, that's only going to come up in 3 months, whatever he typed to that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's harder to deal with, because you're never quite sure what's going on. You can't track where the issues are and what the problems are and who's having what really is the beef, and you never say things to each other's faces. You just have these weird clandestine meetings and DMs and shit, you know. And I was also, by the way, I was also largely talking about League of Legends teams there, because I was trying to make like an equivalent comparison where you got like the team all in one. And by the way, in League, they have to be way more buttoned up than CS, unfortunately.
I think people in big cities in America are much more direct than people that came
right.
from,
Which top pro player in NA right now is a New Yorker who goes, "Hey, I'm fucking walking here." None of them. They're all nerds, mate. They're all people like Grim. Grim looks like he's my fucking regional manager at a fucking Arby's, and he's like, "Sorry, sir, we compliment the brownies to take home." Like, he's not fucking telling Elise he's a prick. You know,
I'm thinking Stewie. Stewie was the guy that was the most direct out of anybody.
And there's a reason why he got bulleted from the fucking org that recruited him. That's why, bro, because he was too direct.
Yeah, he was too. Well, yeah, but he was like one of the biggest winners in the space because he was just direct.
Sure.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm just saying there are examples. Obviously, I'm just saying, yeah.
Right, the last one is my ugly point. Actually, it's a pretty simple one, but I think it's very important to make this clear. I will say it's certainly no problem on Vitality's end. If you saw the interview Spinks did with HLTV.org, he mentions this in the first 3 answers in a row, even when they're not asked about this player. So I can tell you, after being able to read it 3 times, that ZywOo is ill. ZywOo is ill right now. It's actually why he's not playing as well and why he looks off his game. And quite frankly, the story goes, suppose he hadn't even slept or eaten for a day or something. Something's like really bothering him. I guess he has like a stomach bug or a fever or something. Basically, like, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I have been one of his biggest critics at these big lands, but you have to actually be healthy. I'm not going to take it. Like, if his fucking leg got ran over by a car, I wouldn't be like, well, you didn't play very well in that game, ZywOo. Can't be much of a goat, can you? Like, there's extenuating circumstances. So first of all, the reason I put it in ugly, I don't even put it in bad, is because the worst thing is it's not enough to make him not play, which would then mean the results wouldn't count for him. He's going to play and he's going to do his best, but if this continues, it might be scuffed. Like, there's a world maybe now where they don't even qualify. Who the fuck knows? Or they go out in the quarters. And sadly, history will just look at a Liquipedia and go, what the fuck, he failed, and people will look at a score on a HLT and they'll never know this detail. So I actually do want to make it clear, if he is really ill, which certainly checks out, it tracks based on how he's playing, I think it's worth pointing out. I think it's a bomber also. He's literally the reigning MVP of the last major. They were the winners. I want to see this guy in full form. I even told you on all the shows, my number one thing I want in CS at this major, there's one thing alone. I just want a playoff series between fucking ZywOo and Donk in Spirit and Vitality. Just have a real series where they're both at peak power and we get to see who's the best. Well, we're not going to get to see that if this guy's ill, are we? Because as you see, the one person you can't have be ill on Vitality is ZywOo. Come on.
I didn't see this because this came out today and I was just watching all the games today and I didn't read this. So this is, that's just super frustrating. Yeah, because I mean, because I want to levy criticism against ZywOo and not have to have this as like an excuse for it all.
Yeah.
if he fails, I want it to be because of regular reasons that that he hasn't adopted. Because like I had all these things ready to go in the chamber loaded. It's like, well, he's not picking up the op as many people are. Like, you know, he hasn't adopted it as fast. He thinks it's still the rifle meta or something like that at the beginning of CS2. But it's like, if he's just sick, man, then it's just like,
I'll give you an example. At that point. Right, so you know, if anyone watches the UFC, they're going to know this reference that I'm making here. When they had the recent UFC, I think it's welterweight championship between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington, it was a really bad fight, despite the fact it was mega hyped. Now, what people didn't know was supposedly in like the first 30 seconds, the Colby Covington guy just broke his hand when he punched him. So then he basically couldn't fight normally and couldn't even do some of the wrestling because his hand was broken. But because no one knew this, everyone just mega criticized him for the fight and said he was a bitch and a coward and he didn't want it enough and he's a boring fighter. But like you say, Maui, unfortunately, then you feel bad when you find out that they're injured, but after the fact, you know, I know what you mean. That's why I hate it. I want to just be able to analyze this legit, straight up, and not have any concerns. Any problems, Vu? What do you think of this?
I think Vitality are safe. There's no way they're losing to Complexity. They're getting to the playoffs regardless, and then they'll have some time off, and ZywOo will give us our. I hadn't even thought of the matchup that I want to see most at the major, but absolutely Vitality versus Spirit is exactly what I want to see at the major. Yeah.
I mean, low-key, I actually, unironically, I even know exactly what I want to see. I want to see them play a map like Mirage, and I want to see Donk on T-side, have one of those set-up entries, and go into the A site where ZywOo is waiting with the AWP. That's all I want to see. And I want to run that experiment like fucking 50 times if possible. And let's just see whoever the better man is, let's just see. Let's just see.
It should happen. It's going to happen.
It has to, surely.
There's no way they lose the complexity.
Surely.
They're an NA team. There's just no shot. No shot they lose. Vitality, please.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, yeah, no. In terms of dream matchups, I felt like it was just like we've already seen the phase spirit, we've already seen the phase vitality. So I kind of, yeah, phase probably improved a bit or something like that. I guess their first couple of day results say otherwise, but the only other team that I felt like could really take spirit off their game was a full force ZywOo. As much as it hurts to say that, and maybe like a VP because they're just such an awkward team to play against. So I like seeing VP against anybody, to be honest, but like especially Vitality just because of the star power of ZywOo.